need to ask some very, very serious questions.
It's not just that we want to win, there are jobs and reputations on the line here.
Finish 15.
Lessons to learn.
I don't know why you keep looking at me for advice. You believe in yourself.
Oxford came here to try and turn the tide, but it has not turned yet.
We can win this.
Not here just to have a fun time.
Utter despondence in the Oxford crew.
Yeah, it would probably really suck if we didn't win.
I will sell my soul to the devil to win this race.
Hello and welcome to the Tideway from Jonathan Ledyard. Is there a more beautiful setting for a rowing race? We're about to find out, certainly for the final fixture of the build-up to the 2025 boat race. Alongside me I have two alumni from Oxford, Ella Stadler, who was the women's president in 2024, and the winning blue boat, Dave Ambler, in 2022. As I say, this is going to be the final series of fixtures. We started in January with Cambridge. We're going to end now with Oxford, 2 weeks away from the boat race. So this, Ella, is a big occasion, surely, because we've got the boat race crews announced. The blue boats are known. So how much of an extra dynamic does that give this fixture?
100%. So crews were announced on Wednesday and the boat race now 2 weeks tomorrow. So for them, they will have probably been in this crew for a bit of time before the announcement. So today will kind of be that proving ground of let's see how the boat is going and let's really find out what we need to test and what we need to finalise before the big day in 2 weeks' time.
The last time the nation saw you was at the finish.
Yes.
When you had to process the fact that it had been a dramatic race but it hadn't gone as well as you wanted. How have you managed to go through that process? Because that must have been difficult.
Yeah, super hard, super challenging day, but also a super great day for Oxford. The Osiris crew won, which was the first Oxford crew to win in many years on the women's side. And so there was a lot to celebrate as a president. It was a super hard day as an athlete, but I had a lot to be proud of as a president.
The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that Dave Ambler is with one crutch. So what's happened? How are you?
Doing very well, thank you, and it's great to be here. Yeah, just recovering from a knee surgery. I think maybe one of the downsides of kind of sport and taking it to a high level is just sometimes the wear and tear on the body. So just kind of keeping up with the maintenance there, and no, doing very well, thank you.
And how long before you'll be back on the water then?
Hopefully not too long. Maybe I think 6 weeks is the kind of official line from the doctor. So hoping to be back on the Thames very soon.
And just your thoughts on the blue boat being announced. That was on Wednesday, a glitzy ceremony in London. How different does it feel now that it's all public? You may have known in the cruise what's going to happen, but now it's official and everyone's starting to look and watch and see how does this boat perform, how does this crew work together? Yeah,
I think it's it'll be one of the last big markers that passes before the kind of boat race actually comes around, and this fixture is really kind of the last one, the last kind of official moment before the boat race. So now there's very much a sort of turning to the race and looking very much forwards to that event. So I think the guys will be really the guys and girls will be very keen to fine-tune exactly what they've been working on for the last year and really kind of hone in on all those things they've been working on and try to put it into practice.
and someone's in a helicopter who may have been coming to watch, I don't know, but that actually is quite significant because on race day this place is a heaving metropolis of people and noise, TV cameras, thousands along the bank and helicopters, so that actually adds to the occasion because this is normally quite a quiet area, but when it's race day it's very different, so this actually helps, doesn't it, to build up that sense of occasion?
For sure. Yeah, race day is completely different to any of this. There will be banners everywhere. There will be people cheering the moment you step out to do anything. And you're kind of watched everything you do. Even the moment you step out of the van to go into the boathouse is filmed. But I think as an athlete, you've prepared for that in so many ways. And they'll be visualising today what it will be like when there's so many crowds and so much noise, and they will know on race day how to channel that out if that's what they choose to do, or how to use that to kind of rile them up and cheer them on in a way.
Just a thought about conditions day. It is a beautiful day, which is lovely for us. But in terms of what you would like as a crew, do you want to be tested more? Do you want a bit more chop in the water? Did you want rain, for example, just to make sure you're thoroughly tested?
Yeah, I think you're kind of happy with whatever you get, really. I think you always want to be kind of tested in every condition. It's obviously more nice kind of rowing on a great day like today, and so from that side of things, I'll definitely be enjoying it. But that is the thing, kind of on the morning of race day, you can have your 2-week forecast, your 10-day forecast, and your 7-day forecast, and it can all look like it's looking towards one set of conditions, and things can kind of drastically change on race day, and very much kind of dependent on how the wind's being funneled along the course. So things can change kind of very quickly, and so I guess from that side of things they'll be hoping to kind of see a little bit of excitement there in the weather conditions, and maybe just seeing how well they can deal with a change of circumstance and a change of events, and whether that kind of impacts how they're able to race and row and really kind of put everything they've been working on into practice.
Welcome to the English weather. Beautiful today, but who knows, maybe an hour's time it's going to change again, but let's see. So in terms of what we've got to look forward to with Ella and Dave, we've got the races coming up, the fixtures at 11:40 for the women, and then we've got the men's race against the London Rowing Club. That's coming up at 12:50. So those two races. We've also got an episode of Turning the Tide. I don't know whether you followed that on YouTube, the boat race YouTube channel. Fantastic series taking you behind the scenes. So we'll have that all part of the programme. But to begin with, we've got the women's race against Leander. And the fact is, we've already had the toss, and Oxford won that toss. They've chosen the Surrey station, and Ella has been talking to two of the key members of the crew.
Here today with Annie Anzakis and Alexia Lowe, both recently named in the women's blue boat, ahead today of the Leander fixture. So Annie, how are we feeling about the weather today? Amazing conditions in Putney. Is that what you were hoping for? Were you hoping for worse conditions to prep you for the day?
Yeah, I think we're always prepared for any conditions. If it's beautiful like this, that's fantastic. If it's torrential rain and wind, we're happy with that too. Obviously, we have that for our Trial 8s race, so I think it's actually really good that we get to practice a different set of conditions today, and obviously makes the racing a little bit more enjoyable as well, so yeah.
Brilliant. And you've got 3 pieces against Leander today. What are you hoping to get out of the fixture for the entire squad?
Yeah, I think Leander are obviously a top side. They've just come off a win at the Women's Head, so I think it's an awesome chance to have some really spicy side-by-side racing with a great opponent the whole way down the course. I think a chance to start to continue familiarising ourselves with the course, different key moments in the race, and I think just to be pushed mentally and physically the whole way down the course, that's all we can really ask for.
Great. And today is the last fixture. 2 weeks tomorrow is the big day. How is everyone feeling in the camp? How's Alan going? What's the narrative? What's building?
Yeah, I think it's final 2 weeks. You just want to squeeze out as much speed as possible. Obviously, there's a really strong foundation at this point. But I think, gelling as a crew and just enjoying the time together. I think Alan really just wants us to enjoy the experience and acknowledges how unique of an opportunity it is. And I think we are really doing that as a crew and as a squad. I think that's kind of the vibe at the moment.
Fantastic. And Alexia, you learnt to row at Oxford, now in your 4th year of rowing and rowing alongside Olympians. How does that feel? How's that gelling as a group?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a super cool opportunity and not something that you get in many other sports, to have the chance 4 years into a sport to be rowing alongside Olympians. And I mean, like Heidi in our boat, she's amazing. She brings so much experience and insight, and I think helps drive everyone on and improve everyone. And so just off the water, and then again, I think being an 8 on the water, it's kind of how much you can come together as a crew and individually what everyone can bring. So really trying to maximise that and learn from everybody around each other.
For sure. And you were in the winning Osiris crew last year with Lily as well, both of you now stepping up to the blue boat. What does that experience of having won a boat race, and how can you bring that into the blue boat conversations now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely bring a lot of confidence from having won a boat race already. I think being in the blue boat, things are slightly different, but at the end of the day, it's the same course, it's the same race, it's the same opposition even. And so just having that confidence bringing in, and like especially coming up to the big day as well, like just having had the experience of Tideway week and like learning to deal with whatever is thrown at you during that week. And so yeah, really excited for the coming weeks and yeah, what's to come.
For sure. Well, good luck to both of you. Hope it's a great race out there and a close race for sure.
Thank you.
Everything seems possible at the moment, doesn't it? It's fair to say. The sun is good. It's the last fixture. The boat race is still to come. And all is well with the world. The progress of the crew, the announcement is out. Everyone knows where they're going. Of course, in 2 weeks' time it could be very different. But at the moment, surely for both of you, Ella and Dave, as we sit now on the course, and what a day it is as well, there's the schedule, the world seems in a good place, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think everyone in the Oxford camp will be really excited for today, last official fixture, and lots will have been building up to this week, especially with the crew announcement. I think for the athletes, it's almost a bit of a relief once that announcement comes out. You can now just start to gel in your crew, not worry about anything going on with selection, any competition between athletes, just focus on your crew going as fast as it can.
And there's the weather, 11 degrees, the wind is 7. Do you want to give us any more details, Dave? Is meteorology one of your specialist subjects? But that looks pretty set fair today, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think those look like great conditions to be racing in. I think, the boat race can be very unpredictable, and the weather can certainly kind of go either way really, and really take a turn for the worse. But just from a kind of enjoyment perspective for us watching and for the rowers taking part today, it's going to be awesome to kind of be there and enjoy racing on what is nearly a kind of an English summer's day. So looking forward to kind of seeing this first race with the women and then the men later on today.
It is interesting how both of you have focused on what coaches, what athletes are looking to get out of it, and you both know what it's like. We'll come to your experiences a bit later in terms of your final fixture, but in terms of what the weather is and what you hope for, I mean, you cast your mind back 12 months. What, as you row down now at the start, as we build up to this final fixture, what's going through your mind, and what are you as an athlete looking to get out of this? What are you looking to learn about your crew as the president?
Yeah, I think first as an athlete, today is the last chance as a dress rehearsal before the big day. So as an athlete, I remember this time last year, I was running through my nutrition, making sure that was perfect, my routine, which songs I wanted to listen to before the big day, what I wanted to be thinking about on the start line, going through all those things so that on the big day, it's second nature. You don't need to be worrying about it. And then as a president, I don't think this is any different to any normal race as an athlete. Once you step out onto that water, once you're in the boat, you're just another athlete. All of the president duties are left behind, and you just have to do that as best you can. Surely, and everyone said, this is the big day, you're going to do anything different. Of course you're not, because that's the whole point. You're in a ritual, you're in a routine, and that is what keeps you going, particularly on race day when the world seems to go mad. Exactly, it's that routine that keeps you grounded in a way. It keeps it as a normal day. So let's have a look through then the start lists for this opening race. Leander against Oxford. Leander had the race against the Cambridge University 4 weeks ago, and that was a tidy crew. This is not lacking, but take us through then. Ex-president, take us through your successes then. Yeah, so on the Oxford women's side, going from bow to stroke, we have Sarah Paulson, Lily Frysham, Tessa Haining, Alexia Lowe, Sarah Marshall, Annie Anasakis, Kyra Del Rey, Heidi Long and Daniel Orton. And in this crew we have such a wide range of experience. It's really amazing to see. We have 2 winners of the Osiris boat race last year from Lily and Alexia in the 2 and 4 seat. We have some previous teammates from Princeton actually, Sarah and Annie. They rowed together as undergraduates and now again as postgraduates. And 3 athletes who were in the blue boat last year, Tessa, Sarah Marshall and Annie Anzakis, with Sarah and Annie also having done a previous blue boat before that. And Kyra and Heidi bring a wealth of international experience, with Heidi even being at the Olympics last year. And Daniel, I mean, this river for him is like the back of his palm. He grew up coxing on this river and he is amazing from everything I've heard from the outside looking in this year. And in the Leander crew, it's also looking fantastic. From bow to stroke, we have Phoebe Snowden, Izzy Sellers, Amy Selesky, Liv Del Castillo, Lauren Carey, Hannah Scott, Philippa Emery, and Abby Topp. And in the coxing seat, Jack Totham, who is actually an Oxford alumni, so maybe a bit of twisted loyalties there for him.
Well, let's see, because I mean, he was in your crew, Dave, wasn't he? We'll come to the Cox in a minute. But in terms of the lineup for Leander, I mean, they are strong. This is going to be some test, surely, isn't it?
100%. I think the Leander fixture is always known in the women's boat race lead up as the big one, the big test. And I think this is a really strong crew for Oxford to be facing and a really important opportunity for them. And I think, at least when I was an athlete, that is how we always viewed the Leander fixture. It was an opportunity to come up against a very fast crew.
But this is what you want. I mean, there's no good just coasting, because on the day you need to be absolutely 100%, and if you're not, then you may well be found out.
Definitely. You want to practice being challenged, and that's what that will be for Oxford today.
So Jack Totham, what a key member he was in 2022. Did he take all the glory of that wonderful day for you in the blue boat?
He definitely took some of the glory for sure. He played a massive part in that. Jack is a tremendous cox, and I think I'm very much looking forward to seeing the job he does today. He understands the river very well and knows kind of exactly where he needs to be placed, and does a fantastic job at kind of bringing a crew together. And he's got some fantastic athletes here. He's got Hannah Scott, Olympic champion and very recent MBE, kind of in the middle of that boat. So he's got some real talent to work with, and I think kind of just looking forward to seeing how this crew kind of comes together, and Jack kind of steering them hopefully to some aggressive and fast lines. Yeah, the winner of the women's Head of the River race this year. So I mean, he's cooking, they're cooking, and this is big for him too. Let's not forget, he's looking to make himself as a bit of a name in women's rowing as a cox. So this is, as much as we focus on what the Oxford women are trying to do, there are plenty in Leander, and Jack in particular, looking to make his way in the GB team. Yeah, 100%. This is a really great opportunity for everyone racing. And for the rowing world, the boat race fixtures are something that people watch, people tune in, and everyone will know that Leander Racing today need to put up a good show. They need to almost defend their win previously at the Head of the River, and they'll all be hoping to prove that today. Give us an insight into Alan French, the coach. I had a long chat with him yesterday. It was fascinating. He and Annie, as they went through their final outing. What did he help? How did you find he approached the job, and what's he bringing to the role? Alan is an amazing coach. I was actually involved in interviewing him, and he brings a wealth of experience. So it's really great having him working now with the women. So there's a familiar figure for everyone involved with rowing in British rowing and around the world. Wherever you're watching, a very good afternoon. Where you may be somewhere at night, we are in the morning. There is Sir Matthew Pinsent, 4-time Olympian, 10-time, Olympic gold medalist, we should say, 4-time Olympic champion, 10-time world champion, boat race winner 3 times for Oxford. And he is going to be our man in charge as the umpires make their way, or the umpire makes their way under the Putney Bridge. We're waiting as the crews gather there. These are interesting moments, tense moments. This things have got to be going, haven't they, Dave? Because this is the final race, as you've both said, for this crew. The next time they're on this water for real is the race itself. Yeah, absolutely. This is very much mirroring exactly what these women will be going through on race day, and they'll very much be feeling the pressure of the occasion today, as well as kind of knowing in a few weeks' time they'll be doing it for real in front of hundreds of thousands of people with a helicopter kind of screaming ahead. So they'll be kind of ready, race kit ready and kind of ready to go. And with these starts you don't have a stake boat, so you really have to be kind of on your toes and ready to go at a moment's notice. As soon as the boats are aligned, the umpire won't waste any time kind of getting them going, getting the race started. He was absolutely clear on that, wasn't he? We went to the fast briefing. Coxes, no messing around. If there's a problem, make it brief, get yourself sorted, and then we will go. So Oxford have chosen to go on the Surrey station, in contrast to last race in 2024 when you went on the Middlesex station. Anything to be gained there, or do you take the approach that basically any station's my favourite station, get on with it? I think both stations have their perks. Ultimately, the fastest boat wins, and that is what will be happening. I think they clearly want to trial being on the Surrey station for whatever reason, and potentially that is a reflection of the pieces that we have on hand today. So, at the moment, Daniel Orton has just got his arm raised, and so Jack Totham as well. So we're both still waiting for both crews to be ready. So just to emphasise, this is the opening race that we have, the Oxford women against Leander, and we're going to have 3 pieces from here to the Hammersmith Bridge, then back again to around about Harrods, and then we go again to the bandstand, and then from the bandstand to the finish. Oxford. So Leander happy, but still, now here we go.
No, thought we were going to go. We had this drama. I always wonder what it's like for the crew. No, still not ready. Now we are. And away we go. So we're underway. Oxford University women against Leander, and let's see what sort of start there will be and what sort of move there will be into what sort of water. Level so far. Sometimes we've seen extraordinary breakneck starts from one or the other, and already it seems Leander looking to make their way, moving across towards Oxford Water, fair to say at the moment, ex-president?
I'd say at this stage the crews are very comfortably distanced. Just coming past us, it looks like Leander might have a slight advantage as they're coming past London Rowing Club.
Just by 2 seats as we sit in the London Rowing Club watching this as the launches follow, and it's a good strong start then. And Dan Alton will be looking to make his move with the very experienced Heidi Long. Everyone I've spoken to about Heidi Long has only huge praise for the way, as an Olympian, sometimes Olympians, you will know this when looking at you, Dave, well, come in with a bit of a swagger, but the fact is she is such a collegiate operator that it has inspired the squad, as I understand it, fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. From the outside, I have only heard fantastic things about Heidi's influence as an athlete and as a leader, really bringing the squad from all levels, whether that's bringing the blue boat together or bringing the reserve boats all the way, the spares, everyone together.
Well, so far so good, isn't it, Dave? In the sense that if you're looking for side-by-side racing, no one has broken clear yet. Oxford stroke rate 37.5, Leander 35. Are they settled into a rhythm more easily, more quickly, do you think, more smoothly, Dave?
Yeah, I think this is a great start to the race, and I know the crews will now kind of look to transition into their base race or base race pace and get onto rate. But it is a shorter piece than kind of the boat race, and so they know they're racing to Hammersmith. They know kind of for this piece the main advantage sits with Leander. They've got the main bend on this first piece, and I know that will swing in Oxford's favour in later pieces, but here Oxford are kind of really going to have to stick with them. They've got into their pace now, and they're just going to have to try and hold on to Leander and see if they can start to make inroads back into that margin.
Yeah, so if a keen listener might have noticed that Oxford were just warned there by umpire Matthew Pinson. So that will be that the boats are just coming slightly too close together for his liking, and they'll be now encouraged to move back further to the Surrey station, so to the left of your screen.
Seems quite a move by Leander to dominate that water. I mean, okay, yes, they have gone further ahead, but nonetheless, Oxford, Leander now getting a warning. Well, I think they've moved quite a lot there, and they've actually, Jack has very kindly decided he will move just a little bit as Oxford try to come back.
For sure, and I think when you're on the Middlesex bend, you really want to push that Surrey crew out as far as you can when you have that advantage, and almost knock them off kilter before they then get to this really wide part of the river here with far less markers than earlier.
Jackson a very aggressive coxswain. He'll know exactly what he needs to do from his side to put his crew in the best position, the best water possible, and to be fair to him, he's done exactly that. He's kind of pushed Oxford wide around that bend and used the advantage they have in speed to take the line he wants.
That is a very aggressive move, and it's a very dominant move in terms of their position on the water as well. Are they now almost clear, or is there just a little bit of an overlap between the bow and Jack Totham?
I think it looks like there might still be a little bit of overlap, because otherwise the umpire won't have recently warned them, and the umpire will be a lot more comfortable with the crews becoming in line one behind the other. So there must still be a little bit of overlap, and it looks especially now like the crews are getting further apart, and Oxford might even be pushing back now that the Leander advantage has ended.
So what would you be looking for then if you were in the 2-seat as you were last year? In this fixture with Leander, you can sense surely that they've broken clear. How do you respond?
I think what's interesting in the bows is that you almost are the last point of contact if a crew is about to break clear, and you want to be communicating any change in that to your stroke seat. So Sarah and Lily in the bow seats there, if they are hearing that Leander are closer, they'll be shouting forward to Heidi, Kyra, Annie, Dan, saying we're gaining or things are changing, we've got this, giving that hope. Because if you're in the stroke seat, Leander feel quite far away, and that's almost bow's responsibility is to communicate that through.
Well, it's not as if Leander have sent a weakened crew just because they had 4 Team GB athletes in the March the 2nd fixture against Cambridge University. There's Phoebe Stodden, there's Izzy Sellers, Lauren Carey, Hannah Scott, as we know, was Olympic champion in Paris last year, Philippa Emery and Abby Toff. I mean, this is some crew, so therefore, in terms of the opposition, this is exactly the examination they would have wanted. But is this how they would envision this would happen so early on in this first piece?
I think from Oxford's perspective, you want to come up against the best competition you can. You want to practice in the most kind of extreme circumstances, and coming up against such a strong Leander crew, whilst certainly a force to be reckoned with, is just a great opportunity from Oxford's perspective to kind of really work on what they're good at, but equally kind of highlight and address any issues in these last few weeks before the boat race. And they're doing a really good job now at kind of sticking with Leander. I know they've kind of, yes, they've fallen behind, but they aren't getting dropped now. They're sticking with them, and if they can kind of bridge that gap and slowly creep back onto Leander's water, utilise their bend, they'll be in a great position to take some real positives from this piece.
100%. Looking at the stroke rate there, Oxford at 35 and Leander at 33.5, it's still very much close race contention for that finishing point. And I think from Oxford's perspective, they're going to be looking to practice so many things in this, and that can be practicing what it feels like to be down, practice coming back up on a crew. And as we saw in the boat race last year, favourites don't necessarily win, and a crew from behind can come to win a race. And I know that's something that Oxford are really thinking about this year, is the mentality of challenging all of those different positions you can be in a race.
That's exactly what Annie was saying. They've learned so much. They've taken learnings, however painful it was, and we can talk about the journey and the process and also the result and so on, but actually, in order to change the narrative from 2024 to 2025, there has to be a lesson. There has to be something which they can then, it's the racing mindset and the racing mentality she was stressing along with the coach.
100%. I think 8 days after the race, we had all sat down and we were debriefing. We were already talking about learnings for next year. And that's really what Annie's bringing this year into the crew. Both Annie, Sarah and Tessa know the pain of last year, and they will have so much fire in their belly to change the result this year, and they will be taking all the lessons of that into this fixture, but also in 2 weeks' time.
There is no other sporting event seemingly as intense as the boat race. As we come up to Hammersmith Bridge, and this is the end of the first piece. There are going to be 3 separate pieces. If you're just joining us, welcome along to this live stream on the boat race website. And Leander just easing up now, so that was the first piece taken comfortably by Leander, but as we've been saying throughout that first piece and throughout most of the programme, this is what Annie and Alan French and the whole of the Oxford crew want to learn from. This is what it's got to feel like in order to be ready for the big race in 2 weeks' time. So it's a turnaround. They've got to be feeling good, haven't they? My word, if you know what it's like when you've done well, you think, right, okay, next please.
I don't know, I'm not sure about you, Dave. I think whether you won or lost that piece, you'll be feeling rough at this point.
Yeah, it's always a bit of a shock to the system, and I know they've kind of got 3 of these pieces, but they won't necessarily have paced that as if they've kind of given a third of their effort. They'll be feeling pretty exhausted already, and so, you know, the boat race is an interesting race and it's very long, and you do have to pace yourself to some degree, but equally the advantage of being in front is massive. So for both Oxford and Leander's perspective, it's so much easier to be out in front, and so any crew approaching kind of a side-by-side kind of race like this, where it's one-on-one, is really looking to get that upper hand early and that advantage, and so there's nothing really held back in those first few minutes. It's full hell for leather, so they'll certainly be feeling the sting right now.
Oh yes, but it's still good. It's a winning sting, it's a good sting, isn't it? Whereas for Annie and her crew, Heidi Long and so on, it's something to learn and to try to put right. Now, as we understand it from talking to Alan when Matthew Pinson was going through what was going to happen, as we understand it, the stations will remain the same, as in Leander will go on to the Middlesex station and Oxford will stay on the Surrey station, and then we go again. They're going to go back under Hammersmith Bridge and we're going to restart around the Harrods Depository. So this is the easy part, as you might say, but we're ready to go again. Whereas we're going to see something very different, I think, in the men's. Literally, it's 4 minutes, 60 seconds off, and bang, we go again. And I'm thinking right in saying, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. So it will be quite a different approach to the racing. You know, the breaks here will be longer, and so they'll certainly kind of impact how people are feeling prepared for the kind of second and third piece versus that kind of stop-start nature of just 4 minutes on, 1 minute off.
Out of interest, do you prefer 2 or 3 pieces? I know they're going to hurt whatever you do, or even 4, but 4 actually seems to step it up because there's only 1 minute recovery, as you might say, and then you go again. And literally, as you said, this is not like, well, we'll take it easy for the first and we may do it easy for the second. You're at it, because if you're not at it, you're not ready for April the 13th.
I think absolutely. But I think what will be really challenging with these kind of the three pieces is actually the break in between can sometimes be really detrimental to kind of how you feel for the next piece. And so they'll be feeling pretty exhausted right now. They'll have a break that's longer than a minute, but sometimes actually that will mean the body will start to cool down. They'll really start to feel fatigue, and mentally I think it's actually one of the most challenging things to sometimes have that break and then get yourself up for it again. Whereas if it's a minute, you kind of know that next one's coming right away, whereas they're going to have to kind of feel the sting on the legs already of that first piece and know they've got kind of two more of those, and they've had that time to really think about that.
You're nodding furiously. I'm very grateful probably not in the crew, hey?
Yeah, I think on sunny days in Putney, I really miss being on the water. But when I watch pieces, I think I'm quite glad to be behind the microphone today. But I think my comment on the various types of fixtures we've got today is I always personally preferred fixture structures where they were based on different markers around the course. So I preferred thinking I know roughly I'm coming up to Hammersmith rather than worrying about the time, because I don't think I was really any good at judging how many minutes into a piece I was, whereas you can somewhat have an awareness of your surroundings, or the cocks will be telling you, etc.
You've always got 8 people who are hoping for basically to know exactly where they are in a 4-minute mark and not having any clue themselves, whereas it's quite nice, you know, looking out your periphery and seeing exactly where you are, and hopefully these crews know the course as well, so they know exactly how much longer they've got to do, whereas 4 minutes is quite it's an ambiguous time which is hard to track when you're rowing along and, you know, putting all your effort into it.
That's a very interesting point. Good point. And in terms of how conscious you are of where you are, because this is not a river that you do that often. You know, there are the fixtures and then the race itself. It's not like in a football team, a rugby team, a cricket team. You know this is your home. You know everything about it. This can be quite an alien place to be, surely.
I think it can be. I think once you're this far into a boat race season, it becomes second nature. I think the first time you come down, normally maybe the weekend before Four's Head in November time, yes, those markers feel absolutely foreign. Harrods Depository wouldn't know what they're talking about. By the time it gets to March, you could probably recite the exact metres down the course that every single marker is known to be, especially from the coxswain seat. And the cox will also be feeding that information back to the crews.
So, we're getting ourselves ready in the Leander crew. Izzy Sellers just preparing herself, first season at Leander, former lightweight, GB lightweight pair, and also in the World Championships as well. It is this wonderful day. If it's like this on boat race day, actually out of interest, do you want sunshine, or I mean you can't, you just got to get on with it. I accept that, but is it you just forget it altogether, or is it just this is a lovely day, we're going to absolutely smash it?
I think you're looking forward to having some people on the bank for sure, and so from that side of things, you're certainly looking forward to a kind of sunny day. But in reality, you're not too bothered. At the end of the day, you're so focused on the task at hand, and you've been working towards it for a fair few months, that you're not really too fussed. You're just hoping that it's not kind of biblical conditions where you're at risk of sinking, I think.
No, I mean, there have been some dramatic sinkings, we know, my word, and there's nothing quite dramatic as that. And the challenge, of course, and this is what's going to be interesting, for the Oxford men, is that there are 4 different pieces in almost different stretches of water. The wind could be different. We're expecting more chop once we get round onto the Surrey Bend, so that will examine their mettle. But we're still waiting. As we understand, they were due to go back towards that Harrods former depository, which is the other side as we look of Hammersmith Bridge, so there seems some delay while we make ourselves or set ourselves out in the right position. So this is a lot longer, and this is going to play into the drama you've both hinted at already, and we all know that the longer that it takes to get ready, the more challenging it will be to pick a pace again. And also, when you're out there, you've got the cox talking, obviously, but in terms of who's going to be leading, is it going to be Heidi with her experience about what we've got out of that, what we're going to try and get out of the next stretch, the next piece?
I think potentially Heidi could be leading. I think I saw Kyra making some comments there to the rest of the crew. I think everyone in that boat has a wealth of experience and has a valid point to bring in the conversation of, right, what went well there and what are we going to change? But also, you don't have much time. They're probably going to have had 30 seconds realistically to debrief, maybe a quick conversation from Alan, and then they need to actually forget about what happened in the last one and get ready for the next.
I know Matthew was very keen actually to say the umpire, let's get round there. We're not going to have too much chit chat because actually we've got to get these 3 pieces in. Then we've got to get back for the men's event, and we've got to be all ready to make this happen. So do your debriefs, your more lengthy debriefs, clearly after the event, not now. But I think we're almost. I can hear him. I think he's very keen to get things sorted.
Yeah, and the other crews will also be racing today, so it's not just the blue boats we have racing today. We have Osiris against the second Leander crew and the lightweight crew, and the same on the men's side with Isis and lightweight men racing.
So there's a lot to achieve, and it's taking time, it has to be said.
I think it's a real challenge here for the Cox to kind of take the initiative and take charge of the crew when everyone's pretty exhausted. You know, everyone plays their ninth of a role, but when you're pretty fatigued and you know, you're not necessarily thinking your best kind of thoughts or thinking as clearly as you would when you're exhausted. This is where the Cox really takes charge and sort of effectively instructs and tells the crew exactly what they want to do. There's always time for individual thought, but right now the Cox will just be fully in charge, and I know kind of both Jack and Daniel will be looking to really kind of take charge of each crew, get themselves ready for the next piece, whilst also discussing kind of the tactics and what they want to work on, whilst, you know, having that moment to reflect and think about that last piece they've done whilst looking forward to the next one. So it's a challenging task this for the Cox, and I think they'll be really up against it here.
Well, Jack is a very bubbly character, as you both know, and I think he's relishing this, and I think if he can pick up... So that's it, very simple. He likes to keep it simple, does Matt Vincent. Very happy to assert himself on the river when he's in this role, because you need a bossy umpire in a sense, don't you? Just make sure you know the rules exactly, a bit like you're talking about the Coxes, that this is what we're doing, get on with it.
Yeah, and this will be a really great practice for especially the Coxes, because what's important for the boat race Coxes is that they get a practice run with their official umpire. So Matthew Pinsent is the official umpire for the women's boat race in 2 weeks' time, and Oxford, this is their practice run, as well as having trial 8s, and Cambridge will have had their practice run with the official fixture, as well as having other fixtures with different umpires.
There's a real kind of degree of gamesmanship here from the Coxes. You definitely want to get your crew in the best position, and you know, they don't have a stake boat, they don't have a defined starting point, they've just got to come together, and so they'll certainly be looking to get an advantage.
So we're now just preparing ourselves again. Both crews get ready to paddle.
Definitely looks windier here than it did at the start, at the beginning of that other fixture.
And we're underway. Piece 2. And let's see how Oxford respond then. They have the advantage, as we can tell by the Surrey bend. Let's see if they can make that tell. It was certainly a very fast, dominant start by Leander. And then they slipped into a very easy rhythm, not by much. And now that looks for those crews are quite close together already. So Jack Totham living up to his billing as bold and adventurous and aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And so interestingly on this piece, it is a kind of purely Oxford advantage in terms of the bend. So racing to the bandstand, there is kind of, from our view here, the river curves only to the left, there's no right curve. So from Jack's perspective, he wants to push kind of the Oxford crew over to the left as much as possible, get them out the stream and put his crew in the best water he can.
Yes, exactly. So we're racing with the tide here against the stream, and the tide will be running fastest in the middle part of the river, and so the two Coxes will be competing to be in that fast patch of water.
So it's a good strong start this by Oxford, it's fair to say. I mean, yes, they got the advantage, but let's see how they're able to hold it, and if they are able to even extend it, or whether Leander can come back and just by maybe an eighth of a length. Maybe you've got Leander ahead, but they have more river to navigate, because as we can see, it's a huge, that's a wonderful angle to see exactly how difficult that turn is.
Yeah, so the Surrey bend kind of at this point the river kind of comes on in 2 sections. This is the first section here, then along the Eyot, where you can kind of see that motor cruiser in the distance. It's a fair straight before another bend to the left, and that motor cruiser kind of coming down and ploughing down the river is going to change things. The crews are going to have to move to the right hand side, and they're also probably going to have to deal with quite a lot of wash. So in terms of boat race kind of practice from Oxford's perspective, this is chaotic, but it's perfect. This is exactly what you'd want to deal with on race day.
100%, and you can hear the umpire there warning the crews to move apart as they got a bit closer together. Both Jack and Dan really fighting for that central position.
Oxford here doing a great job though at kind of really taking kind of the piece out hard, and they've got, I think, an initial advantage, and it looks like Leander have come level and they might be half a seat or a seat up, but they're very much both going the same speed now, and as Oxford get onto this straight, they need to kind of stick in their rhythm, deal with the wash coming off this cruiser, and then prepare to take advantage of the next bend, which is again in their favour. So really a good start on this piece, and a good step on from the first one.
There was a notice to Mariners, which Matthew Pinson was talking about. I don't know whether they realised that in their launch, but there we go. Thankfully, any instance have been averted, and that was one of the things which was very clear, that if any instance, then we just stop the race and we go again. But now, we've got battle joined, most definitely, because Jack Totham's done a great job in terms of securing Leander very much side by side. And how are Oxford going to respond? So far, so good. It's interesting, a difficult angle here to see who is actually just ahead. Is it a seat here? Is it a seat there? But this is certainly much more promising from an Oxford perspective, wouldn't you think?
100%. This will be exactly what Annie said going into this fixture that she wanted. She wanted a close race for her squad, and that's what we've got here. They are really fighting. Oh, it's getting a lot more rough as we've come past this. I think they're hitting the rough water from the powerboat that just went down, probably hitting Oxford a bit worse there because of their positioning in the river, and it looks like the change in direction is affecting the water a bit more now that we're facing this way.
And that looks like Leander have just stolen ahead. A little bit of a march there, but can they maintain it? And of course in the final piece, from the bandstand to the finish, that becomes more of an advantage for the crew on the Middlesex station, the right as we look, so that will favour Leander. Just in terms of the makeup of the crew, there was a lot of discussion about who's going to be in 7, 6 and 5, wasn't there? Was it Sarah Marshall, Annie Anazakis and Cara Del Rey, or Cara Edwards as was? How has that, do you think, been resolved? How do you think, how well are they performing? And is this decision to change them around, because Sarah was one set in 7 and Cara was back in 5? How's this worked?
I think this looks like it's working really well. I think Cara brings a lot of experience into that 7 seat. Sarah's done a boat race at 5 and a boat race at 7, so she'll be comfortable in both those seats. She's an incredible athlete, so I know she'll be doing a great job.
So that's the blue boat has been decided, and there's a vindication from the 2024 president. But how are they going to shape up against Leander, who have again kicked on once more, with Hannah Scott driving them in seat 6. It's packed full of these Great Britain internationals. But Heidi Long staying calm, pulling long, and we may talk more, say, in the men's event about the way that the great Drew Ginn has helped. He's over here, the Australian master of rowing and technique, and how he's been helping the Oxford men. But in terms of the style, how would you mark it at the moment? How would you quantify it?
Yeah, I think Oxford are looking very kind of smooth in this rougher water here. I know there was a few kind of strokes there with a few blades got caught out in the real rough stuff, but the conditions here are very different to what they were at the start and down here at London. You can see there's quite a strong headwind they're fighting against, and there is a bit more chop on the water, but the blade work from Oxford looks very good. They kind of look calm and composed, and they've looks like they've kept overlap with Leander, and they've had the advantage, and they look to be making the most of it.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there, Dave. I'd say it's also fantastic to see how direct Oxford are to the water, even in the bad conditions. Their technique hasn't slipped when the conditions have changed. And as a Cox, that'll be definitely something that Dan is saying to them, of just focus on what you need to do, get your job done.
Leander certainly getting their job done under the guidance of Jack Totham. They've navigated this Surrey bend and they've held station. They were level, and now they've managed to pull clear once more. But again, with Alan French analysing this as much as us and anyone else who's along the river in a launch, it's how do you react? How do you stay calm? Do you lose your rhythm? Do you maintain that flow and the catch and the way that you target coming back at Leander, knowing that we've got the Middlesex station to come very much in favour of Leander?
100%. And I think also interesting to think now as we go into the third piece, Oxford having lost 2, that doesn't mean that it's not all to play for in the third piece. I mean, last year when we faced Brooks, we lost the first 2 and we won the third, and it was really important to us that third one didn't matter at all. It was an independent event from the first 2, and that's what they'll be thinking of going into this third piece. Just approaching the finish now with the bandstand there on the far side of the screen.
So it's another well-earned victory in inverted commas for Leander, but it's another workout very much for Oxford. And there's the instruction from Matthew Pinson, wind down, and that's piece 2 done. So if you were alongside Alan French, Dave Ambler, how would you be discussing what happened there and what you learnt and what you saw and what you enjoyed?
Yeah, I think ultimately this Leander crew is going very well. I think the base pace there is quicker than the Oxford crew, and I think that's the first two pieces have kind of showed they've just slipped away very, very kind of slowly but deliberately kind of through those pieces. But I got to say, from the Oxford women's side, that the pace has been incredibly consistent, and that second piece there was a really good start. They kind of used their advantage well, and they used the bend being in their favour to get an advantage on Leander. And I think Leander's base pace there was quicker than Oxford's, but Oxford did a great job at keeping to their rhythm, keeping to their pace. And yes, they lost contact in the end, but they didn't instantly shoot back after. They kept pushing, and it was that slow incremental kind of stepping out of Leander, not a drastic change of boat speed. So I think from the Oxford perspective, I think they can be really, really confident in their kind of resilience of pace there, because they're showing real consistent speed there. And so yes, they're going to look to want to turn this result around in the third piece, but I think there's a huge amount to take away here just in terms of the consistency of that base pace.
Yeah, 100%. And going into this third piece now, so we'll be going from the bandstand area to the finish line, and this is an advantage to the Middlesex station. So if they stay on the same stations, this will be an advantage to Leander. But Oxford will be thinking, okay, this is technically against us and we have just lost the first two pieces, but how can we turn this around? How can we make this a winning piece? Because it can happen. You can be down coming into that final bend and crews have won on Surrey. So they'll be holding on to that hope, knowing it has been done and we can do it now.
One of the features of Alan French's coaching, as I understand it, is the intensity. He's taken that up. There have been less injuries, which is always fascinating as to how that correlates. But it's not just driving them more and more, but it's just the work that you do, make it absolutely as on the limit as possible. Yeah,
100%. I'd say a big word that was used last year and again this year is making every moment purposeful, and making sure that when you're at training, it's efficient training. We're not wasting time in the boathouse. We're very busy. We've got big degrees to be getting done, especially, we've got medics on the team. Annie, a graduate medic, she has such a full plate, and so Alan's really focused on making that training count. So the mileage has increased, but I think their hours at training has interestingly decreased, and it's all super efficient.
Does that tally with you? Is that like how you like to go about your rowing? Make it intense, but don't go on and on and on hours of it.
Yeah, I think particularly kind of whilst you're balancing academics with rowing, and obviously that's very much the case at Oxford. Your time is limited, and the more time you spend at the boathouse or kind of sitting in traffic in a minibus, it only puts more pressure on kind of your sleep or missing meals, etc. So just from an athlete perspective, the more efficient you can be with your training, it only helps you deal with both the demanding pressure of studying very rigorously whilst competing to such a high standard.
Yeah, and I think a big change that the women made last year, and I know the men have also now joined with this year, is thinking about the times of training and actually focusing on those being around the studies rather than often interrupting studies, because it's quite stressful if you know you're having to miss a tutorial or miss time in the lab, and actually we found that it's better for the student athlete to make training and the athlete side of your work around the student bit. The student bit is essential. You can't be doing this without being a student, so they've got to make both work there.
Can you identify with the word that Dave used when I chatted to him earlier in the week? He said his year at Oxford was the most chaotic because there was never a time to think. You were always on a mission. They had to do this, do that, do this, do that, go here, go there. And almost now back with Team GB, you've always got too much time to think.
Yeah, it was almost quite maybe refreshing is not quite the right word to use, but I guess so much going on, balancing that academic workload and the work with the rowing to a high level, that you don't have too much time to kind of sit there and slob away on your phone. So actually I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd say I almost felt like a passenger to my own life at times. I would be going to training, then I'd know I need to go to the library or go to this meeting or go to this president's meeting, blah, blah, blah. And I would just move from one thing to next and be engaged in those things when I was there, but there was no in-between time to choose what to do. I just knew what I had to do and got it done.
But how do you make sure you're not overwhelmed? Because at one stage you're on the carousel, but if you fall off, that's quite challenging, very challenging to get back up, because, Alan French isn't going to say, don't worry, it's okay. No, he wants you there. Likewise, your tutors and so on, they want you there as well, doing what you've got to do for your work, academics.
100%. It's a lot to manage. It's a big plate, lots of plates to juggle. And I know one thing that they've changed this year, which is fantastic, is they've changed the coaching structure. So on the Oxford side, the coaches are taking a lot more of the workload, especially away from the president. So the president is no longer have to do admin tasks, etc., which I think has been a fantastic shift and something that Annie and I have spoken about a fair bit.
So were you instrumental in making that happen? Because you felt that there was too much going on, so many energies diverted to admin?
It was actually all Alan. He was very good, I'd say, from like kind of when he joined in December, at noticing how much was on the president's plate. And at that stage, everything that was going towards me, he filtered first and said, nope, I'm doing that, nope, James is doing that, etc. So there's just a lot more of that going on right now, which is fantastic for the athletes.
James Powell, the assistant coach, has been there for the last 6 years and playing a key role, as you can tell. So we're now waiting for the third piece as the crews just right themselves once more. We've got scullers in view at the moment. As well, they're everywhere. So the boats will be turning around very shortly. It's also notable how this is one of the great demands of this unique, A, the championship course, but B, what you have to do as well, given that you are a student, you are there an undergraduate, postgraduate, doing your studies, how you have to manage your time and still perform to the highest level. There's no drop-off, because as we know, rowing is probably the most brutal sport in the world. If you're not performing, you can perform on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but if Thursday and Friday bad, you could be in trouble, you're not in the blue boat or whatever.
Yeah, so I think you've kind of got you know, athletes here with Olympic experience who are still achieving personal bests whilst training and doing their academics full time at Oxford. So really, it kind of just shows and highlights the level to which these athletes are training to, kind of from the physiological perspective, but equally whilst doing such a kind of rigorous and demanding workload. And it is a real challenge.
Yeah, it's super challenging, but interesting. I know Oxford found some results in the past few years that students are more likely to achieve a first grade degree result if they have been highly involved in sports during their time at university.
The power of sport, can't beat it, in terms of all the teamwork and the mindfulness as well, you might say. Just a thought, when you've got both of you, when you've got such a disparate crew, you can have novices. For example, we've got Heidi Long, as you said to Alexia Lowe, you've got Heidi Long, who's there as an Olympic champion. Then you've got someone like Alexia Lowe, who's just making her way, only learned to row at Oxford. How do you manage to make sure they blend and gel together? There isn't a sense of imposter syndrome for Alexia, whereas for Heidi, what am I doing with someone who's just started to row? Man, I'm an Olympic champ. What are you talking about?
I think you might have different comments on this, having rowed an post-Olympic year for a boat race. I think it's a different task for Alan and for Annie as president. You're managing a different group of people. But I think both bring different perspectives to the conversation, and it's the merger of those two which can have the most productive outcome.
What's your role as a president then, to make sure that everyone not so much gets on, but actually what is going to make this boat go faster? You may not get on as people, we all know that in various offices, whatever we do, but somehow if it works, then you've got to make sure it develops and progresses.
So I think as president, it's about facilitating the entire squad, and when it's gone down to specific crews this time, you might have an athlete leader within that crew, and that can be the president in some years, and other years that's not necessarily the president. I think as president, early on in the year, you're trying to really establish a common goal and a narrative of what you want to build together. I know in my year, Wolfpack randomly became the big phrase that we all use to kind of speak of our... I don't really know how we got it.
Who came up with that one?
We had a few sessions of thinking about identity and what we thought was important, what values we liked, and it just kind of emerged from those three different conversations. So the wolf became a big analogy that we drew on, and I know they have similar things like that they've worked on this year, and they'll gel well together.
What about in your crew then? Any secrets you want to about the 2022 crew, which obviously went on to win, inspired by Jack Totham?
Yeah, I was just trying to have a think and kind of reflect on my own experience there, and kind of, I think, you know, there was a wealth of experience with 5 Olympians returning after the Tokyo Olympics, and so for the kind of younger guys in the crew, of which I was one, we were just trying to kind of almost along for the ride and fit in with a new program and a new style, whilst also having all those experiences or experienced individuals. I think one kind of thing we always look back on and find funny is Olympic champion Liam Corrigan, who was a returning Olympian at the time from Paris in the men's 8. Kind of we almost got to kind of near the end of the season, and he asked actually like what is threshold training. We'd been doing this for. What was his question? What is threshold training? And this was something we'd actually talked about basically most days, and then it kind of got to the point where the Olympian in the room and soon to be Olympic champion had to ask, I actually don't really understand what this is. So refreshing in that sense that even if you were a returning Olympian, or equally you were just trying to kind of sort of develop on in your own career, everyone can ask the silly questions sometimes, and whether you've got that experience or you don't, I think everyone works really well in the team. And kind of on the women's side here with Oxford, I know kind of Heidi will be able to influence and bring a lot of her own experience, whilst Alexia will have her own kind of take and own often more fresh experience, and be able to bring a lot to the crew herself. So it's kind of great to see that mix, and I think it's one of the kind of real beauties of a post-Olympic year and just every year of a boat race, really.
It certainly adds an extra zing, and I'm sure for the passing viewer, the passing dog walker maybe, it's like you've got Olympians here, so that actually adds something else. So we're waiting for piece 3, with Leander having taken pieces 1 and 2, and Oxford will be on the Surrey station. So at the moment that's too close to the Middlesex bank, so we've still got a bit of work to be done there, it would seem. Wonder where Leander have got to at the moment. They seem to be in the wrong places, but
yeah, both crews will need to spin at this point and then get onto the correct stations, so probably a couple minutes out still.
Yes, a challenge for everyone, because as you've said already, this is you just had 2 pieces, and there's a third still to come, and you know that there's still plenty to do, because also one of the extraordinary facets of this race, this historic race going back more than 200 years, is that just because you're in the crew, you're selected, doesn't mean that you're going to be there, because we've seen in history the number of times changes have come, particularly at Oxford. Sean Bowden was absolutely ruthless, the previous men's coach. If you're not doing it, we're having a change.
Yeah, I think ultimately kind of, yes, the crew announcements happen, but Oxford want to win on the day, and sometimes whether it's illness or injury, or equally, actually sometimes someone can really develop in a short space of time, and it's up to the coach to bring the fastest crew to the tide on the day, and sometimes that doesn't actually necessarily coincide with the real official selection deadlines. And so yes, the crew is officially selected, but there's still the possibility to change it, and ultimately as Oxford, they want to deliver the 2 best crews on the day to kind of go race on the women and the men's side.
Any experiences of that? Were you at all concerned that your position was vulnerable?
I think everyone's always on the edge of their seat. There's always such high competition to be in the blue boat. Both years I found that, and even up until the day, you never know what can happen, and I think you're always worried yourself what could happen if you get injured.
Both crews cuddle. Oxford, Leander,
so
go!
piece 3 then underway under the command of umpire Sir Matthew Pinsent, and this now a race to the finish. Leander back again on the Middlesex station. It's more at the moment still quite level. It turns noticeably once you get round past Barnes Bridge. So let's see how Oxford shape up, because initially in that second piece they were really on it and did a really good job before Leander's experience and also their know-how came through and told. But this is where we want to see the 2024 President's Wish. You go again, where you lost pieces 1 and 2, but piece 3, we're on it, we're going for it.
100%, and a Surrey crew can win on the Middlesex Bend. We've seen it before, and as an athlete, you watch those years back, you hold on to those moments, because right now, that's what they need to be thinking. They need to be thinking, this is possible, we're going to beat Leander.
Keep apart, says the umpire, as Jack Totham seems to go to move the crew on the left of your screen, Oxford away from that bend, and then starts to drive on once more. We're still pretty much level at the moment, side by side, which is exactly what Alan French and his coaching team were looking for, and Oxford doing a good job so far, but we know there's still some way to go.
Yeah, very impressed by Oxford at this stage, and I think what will be in everyone's head in the Oxford camp is this is the last chance to send Cambridge a message. This is the last time Cambridge will be watching them before boat race day in an official fixture. So they really need to show their A game and maybe make Cambridge quake a bit.
Let's see. Well, they're doing a decent job here because there's little more than a seat in at the moment. Final push, the final effort. This is what Aniana Zakis would have said. She has made a point, she was saying, of every time they get in the boat, every time they have an outing, it's all about make Oxford proud, seize your moment.
This is a great test for Daniel here as well around the outside of the bend. So they've had a good start, Oxford, but certainly Leander now looking to kind of step away, and they look to be doing that now. And so from Daniel's perspective, he's got to keep his crew in it. But equally from the steering and from the line he takes, it's kind of up to him to really bully Leander and see if he can push them out the kind of the quicker water. Equally, you know, if there's the odd clash, so be it. It's actually not the worst way to kind of maybe disrupt Leander's rhythm. So it'd be interesting to see kind of how aggressive he is with his steering there. And in terms of his approach to clashing, whether he's willing to kind of have a little bit of blade on blade action there and really kind of take it to Leander, both in terms of speed but also aggressiveness.
You do like a bit of blade on blade clashing, don't you? We're going to come to your Oxford Brook story later when we get to the men's event, but this, at the moment, Leander have broken clear once more. And is Dan Orton being as aggressive as you would want him to be?
I think so. I'm very impressed with his coxing today. I think he's doing a great job, especially now he's really challenging Leander for that water. And it looks like there could be some blade and blade clashing here coming up between the bow seat Sarah Paulson and the 7th seat.
Izzy Sellers and Phoebe Soden. Rather, what am I talking about? It's going to be Abby Topp and Philippa Emery up against the likes of Sarah Paulson and Lily Frasham. So still in touch, and in a way, however much they would love to fulfill what you were saying, go for it, take this third piece. They're well aware the advantage is with Leander on the Middlesex station, but it's staying in touch and again digging deep, seeing how much you can make this boat flow over the water in a style that is going to serve you well, knowing that this could be, in 2 weeks' time, this could be the drive for the line, and it could be much closer, much tighter. We think back to 2003, that almost dead heat, phenomenal.
100%. I think if I was in the Oxford camp, I'd be very impressed by this. The Middlesex advantage here is between a third to half a length. Some people even saying up to a whole length, depending on what you view. So for them to have held on to this, it doesn't look like the margin is that different to other of the pieces. And there we go, that's the finish line there. Potentially still in contact.
So still in contact. Put your Cambridge hat on then, Dave. Set aside your dark blue and tell me what have you seen there? How do you assess their performance, the three pieces we've seen?
Yeah, I think ultimately this is a really exceptional Leander crew. I think kind of firstly credit to them. They put out a real kind of a very strong unit here. And in terms of the base pace, they were quicker today on all three pieces. But if I was looking at this and judging Oxford's kind of performance there, I've got to say in terms of just consistency of pace there, yes, they didn't quite have the base speed that Leander did today, but in terms of the resilience of that speed, even there around the outside of the bend, that margin, kind of, they managed to hold that overlap for kind of effectively most of the bend there when it wasn't in their advantage. In terms of their resilience, whilst being down under pressure, whether it's their advantage or not, I think they can take a huge amount of confidence from that. I think it's a real strength.
So we'll see potted highlights, as you might say, and this was a really, you can tell the difference. We just cut from the end where it's very choppy, and this was a mill pond by comparison. Talk us through this start then.
Yeah, I was very impressed by starts of both crews. I think Oxford there looked like they got to maybe a higher rate off the start than Leander did before both settling down. I think when we looked at the stroke rates through the course, Oxford perhaps stayed at a higher rate for longer before settling into their base pace, which might be a preparation for the big day. I know it's a very front-loaded race, as we've both said already, in 2 weeks' time, so they might be practicing something there.
Yeah, I think just from the start's perspective, I think kind of Leander had a really strong start in that first piece, but Oxford had two improved starts in that second and third piece, and I think particularly on that second piece, I know they kind of probably would have seen that the advantage was in their favour, but they almost had kind of half a length at one point, and so I think should take a lot of kind of or confidence from that. And just in terms of learnings for the boat race, you only get one chance, and they'll know now sort of the level you have to be at and the kind of real commitment to that start you need, and I think they've kind of really improved on that throughout the racing today.
What do you think could have been better then at that start? Was that, I mean, you said you were impressed, but is there anything that I mean, for example, your crew last year, what a great start that was, and you absolutely milked as much as you could from the Middlesex station, and then, you know, still leading, going at the beginning of the Surrey Bend without wanting to go over old ground. But that was very significant. What the start that you made, was it as did the start in 2 weeks' time, does it need to be as more dynamic than we saw just then?
I think it's hard to compare. It's obviously against a different opposition there, and everything is relative, especially in a side-by-side race. I think Oxford looked good. I think it's in the boat race especially, it's always about monopolising those first few minutes, and I think in the second and third piece, where it was a rolling start, it looked like they were maybe able to take greater advantage of those first 2-3 minutes of the race. So maybe it's about condensing their starts and thinking about how they can apply that to race day. And they'll also be thinking now how to alter their starts and the technique of their start as it moves to a stake boat start against the moving water underneath them.
And the start is always just kind of one part of a race, and so yes, there'll be areas they want to look at and areas they'll be really happy with, but you know, at the end of the day, and yeah, you can see there the kind of how they had to deal with some really kind of big waves from that cruiser that kind of zoomed by. But just back to the idea of the kind of start. The start's part of the race. It's not. It can impact it for sure, but it doesn't.
Get it wrong and you're really in trouble. Get it right is no guarantee of anything further down the course, is it?
Exactly, and kind of you can already see Oxford have a great start and the ability to really take it to cruise and get out in front. But I think just in terms of the confidence they should take from that base pace and that kind of resilience under pressure, even when they're down in the boat race, that's where that kind of experience and that kind of characteristic really can come into fruition.
Which plays into what you were saying as to what has been the bedrock of this whole training with Alan French and his team, and this racing mentality to learn from what happened last year. But now it's all about that mindset mentality. It's the same in life, I know, but in terms of the boat race, you know, you've got one shot for 20 minutes and you've got to deliver, and if you're down, then how do you get back and get ahead?
100%, and that would have been great practice for them today, practicing that mentality of, okay, we're down, maybe in stroke seat, I can't hear Leander anymore, I don't know where they are, they could be ages away, we could still be in contact. And it's about Dan motivating them, probably manipulating the truth a bit, and convincing them that they are still very much in this race, still to be giving it their all, and fighting that demon telling them that they're in so much pain they should give up.
That is the challenge, isn't it, in a boat race, that pain where, because this is, of course, never forget, I sometimes think some of those who might go, well, why do we want a university boat race? This is 3 times the length of an Olympic course where gold medals are handed out, and this is just utterly relentless. And by the end, as we saw, Matt Edge last year, absolutely spent in the Cambridge boat, but somehow you find it in you, both of you, because you've done the course, and you have to find that resilience, which is a wonderful word, to come through and deliver as you promised within that trusted environment, within that blue boat or reserve boat, lightweight boat. That is what makes rowing such an extraordinary sport in terms of the trust and the confidence that you have, the belief in the 9 crew members. So Leander, with Jack Totten just lifting himself out of his seat, having an impressive performance, and they will enjoy that. They've done their work, they've come here, they've had a good workout themselves, let's not forget that. They're not just here to make up the numbers. It is much what they contribute to this fixture, because if they just turn up and go through the motions, that ain't going to serve anyone, least of all them. So Leander and the Oxford women will have done their stuff. We're looking forward to seeing what the men are going to be doing, and that race is going to be happening in something like 20 minutes time. So we're going to take a pause from the live action, and we're going to catch up with the boat race documentary series Turning the Tide. You may have seen last year's in 2024. Fascinating insight into what goes on to shape the cruise and the race itself, and we're now going to sit back and enjoy the second episode of the series in 2025.
All right.
It's been a busy day.
Yeah, quite busy.
Fucking go! And again, yep. Go!
So training for a boat race, wow, where'd you start? I think ultimately you look at your hands. Your hands are going to be holding a blade. They are going to be ripped to pieces. You are going to have raw flesh. You're going to have calluses. You're going to have to tape them up. Something's got to give.
You can tell the atmosphere is different to a normal day. It's an important day for them. They want to get it right. We've got a lot of depth this year. Fine margins can change their ranking a lot.
It'll be a tough day for the athletes. Some decisions on whether you make the blue boat or not will be made.
I mean, if you're not that nervous, you're not doing it right.
Caught camera. A lot of nerves going around with selection, seeing who's going to make the cruise. It's a pretty physically grueling test.
There's nothing like an ergometer test. So, if you don't know what an ergometer is, the rowing machine that all rowers are tested on, it is this fearsome beast.
It's pretty raw, it's pretty aggressive, it's pretty primitive, but that's what a maximal effort is. You're just pulling on that thing as hard as you can.
Nervous and excited. Apparently your body responds the same way. I think it's a good practice for the boat race. The time is about the same.
The fastest boats are rowed by powerful guys, so the erg tests are the true metric on power.
It's probably the last big erg test of the first term.
How hard can you push yourself and how long can you put yourself in the hole for?
Oh, I hate 5Ks, so I'm nervous.
Everybody knows that it's an assessment tool, so the nerves will be building, we'll be having conversations with athletes about their plan and is it going to go to plan and what if in that last kilometre.
Staying strong in that last 1K?
Yeah, and so if you're in a position where you're going to be like really close to a very good score, are you going to just go for it? Yeah, of course it'll feel horrible and you're nervous and it'll feel awful. Yeah.
Okay, let's set the screens, 500 splits.
It is so intense, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, boys. 25 seconds.
The coach has an idea of exactly the number that they want you to score, the number that they think it will take to win a boat race.
Okay, let's get ready.
30 seconds.
There's a huge amount of pressure, but to stand up to that pressure and come through if they're going to make the boat.
While you're getting yourself set up, remind yourselves, all you can do is the best you've got today. Are you all ready? Attention!
You never want to underperform on erg day.
Attention, go!
Go!
There's noise, there's sweat, there's anger, there's fear, there's doubt, there's determination. You can see that etched on the faces of all the rowers. They are putting themselves through hell.
It's going to hurt. It's going to really hurt.
You know where you're at, and you know where you should be at. 10 minutes into the pace, you're thinking, I don't know if I can finish this thing.
Just moved to 35 to 2K. But some of the other guys, it was the right side of that. Mark is having a...
Tash is on a 52. The 51s, 52s were good. You got it.
Yeah, boys.
And that's where we leave it. And if you're thinking, why are you doing that? The answer is because there was such a delay with the pieces. They took a lot longer than we were expecting. For obvious reasons, lots of craft there out on the river, cruisers and sculls and so on. So that is just a taster of what you can watch on the Boat Race Company YouTube channel. Fantastic access and insight. And if you're just joining us, welcome along. Jonathan Ledgard, Ella Stadler and Dave Ambler taking you through this second race, which is going to be the men's race against the London Rowing Club. If you just joined us, you won't know that Leander came through strongly in the 3 pieces against the Oxford women, and you can see the conditions are absolutely perfect. If we get that on Boat Race Day in 2 weeks' time, then it'll be a picture for the world feed all around the globe, and many thousands, hundreds of thousands will be here watching. There are still a good crowd out for now as we prepare, and we're looking forward to seeing how this is going to go. The women have been beaten by Leander, but this is going to be a different, completely different style because, Dave, as you know, and we're about to hear your interview very shortly, this is going to be all about 4 pieces with a minute gap, which is nothing like what we've just seen. So explain the challenge then facing the crew.
Yeah, so Oxford have raced London before. They raced them kind of a few weeks ago, and so in racing them again, they know they kind of want to change the challenge and change the circumstances around it and learn something different from this fixture. So they've taken a different approach to it. Instead of doing your typical kind of boat race course split into 2, they've split the course up into 4-minute pieces with 1-minute breaks, which should give them a chance to kind of change how the racing plays out a little bit. Potentially Oxford were the stronger crew in the last fixture, and it gives them the opportunity to use shorter racing to maybe change the dynamic of that. So hopefully it just makes for some really exciting racing and should kind of spice things up a fair amount.
Lovely. Well, you've been talking to 2 members of the Oxford crew, Will O'Connell and Tom McIntosh. Let's hear then what Dave had to find out from those 2 key members of the Oxford crew.
Hi there, I'm here with Will and Tom from the Blue Boat, 2-seat and 6-seat, and here to ask them a few questions before their fixture against London. So Will, I'll start with you. What are you guys kind of hoping to get out of today, and how are you guys approaching it?
Yeah, look, I think just a couple of weeks out from the boat race, we're looking to just really settle in on our race pace rhythm and double down on that, and then execute well so that we have some confidence coming in 2 weeks out that we know we can replicate it on the day.
Yeah. And so you've raced these guys before.
We have.
You're racing them again.
Yep.
I know the format's changed a bit. You're now doing 4-minute pieces.
That's right.
So you've raced this crew before, and I think the kind of margins were fairly comfortable in your favour. What's the kind of approach, or what are you looking to get out of it, having raced this crew before?
Yeah, I think, the change of format, the 4-minute pieces will be interesting. That'll give him, we won't be able to move out as much from them and then have that controlling lead. So they'll even it back up after 4 minutes, which will be interesting. I think we're just trying to get out of, really work on our start, how we transition into that rhythm that I was just talking about. And just trying to be consistent over each 4-minute pieces. I think by the 4th one, I'll probably be blowing pretty hard.
Yeah. And so one thing I was kind of reflecting on in terms of your fixtures is they've been fairly kind of clean races. In terms of clashing and messy races, how are you guys kind of approaching this in that sense? Are you kind of looking for some clashing and some excitement, some action, or are you trying to go out and race your own race, kind of get out of the way and just do your thing?
I certainly think a good race is one where you just execute as best as you can, and clashes and all that external stuff are things that happen, but you sort of don't hope they happen, but when they do, you hope you can just answer the call and stay calm in that moment. Hopefully if there is a clash, it's on stroke side and not on bow side, and we just come out on top. But I actually raced the Thames race in the ISIS crew. We had 2 clashes and we managed to sneak away with it. So I back the boys if it does happen to get their oar on top and walk away cleanly.
And very briefly, I know you've switched sides since kind of trial 8. How are you finding that? How's that switch been? And bow side's your natural side, isn't
right.
it? So feeling a bit more comfortable?
Well, I've actually swapped back.
Okay.
But so I did swap onto stroke side. I definitely didn't master it, that's for sure. It was tricky. But I'm back on bow side, much more comfortable, and I'm hoping to just stay under the radar there, fly under and stay in on bow side. Hopefully no swapping back.
Awesome. I'll turn over and ask you a few questions, Tom. So what's the kind of general atmosphere and vibe, in the team and the camp at the moment? I know you're looking forward to the boat race and the fixtures, and so you're probably your attention is very much to today and building towards there. But what's the atmosphere like? Aside from kind of obviously building that excitement, what is the general kind of theme and vibe within the crew?
I think the vibe's really good. So we obviously amalgamated the two clubs together just over a year ago, and it's been really enjoyable working with the women's team. Annie's been a really good president to work with. We've worked really well together, and I think merging the two crews, we can learn from each other. So obviously our women's team, they bring a lot to the table, and there's certain experience from the men's team as well that we bring together. Speaking between the two, the men's Blue Boat and the men's ISIS crew, I think there's a real eagerness to learn and a willingness to sort of do the work, which I've personally found a lot of inspiration from. Seeing some younger undergraduate athletes come up through, just knuckling down, getting the training done, sort of a no-nonsense approach, has been a really cool thing to see. And so, yeah, I'd say the vibe's pretty good. It's a good day out here today, so can't really complain.
Awesome. And it's been kind of noted from our side. We've seen Drew Ginn spend a bit of time with you guys. How's it been having him kind of impart his wisdom? And obviously he brings a huge amount to the table there. Would you mind just kind of elaborating on how he's worked with you guys and what he's sort of brought?
Yeah, so it's actually been a privilege, I'd say, honestly, having Drew come work with us. So look, if I look at my career coming up, he was sort of the person I'd go to when I'd YouTube how to row a boat well. Drew Ginn would sort of turn up. So he's obviously inspired a lot of people throughout his career, and has had some really incredible results. And for a guy who might not necessarily have the biggest erg in the world, he just sort of figured out how to move a boat well. And I think that's what he brings to the table in his work with us, just sort of teaching the men and women certain nuances of rowing that you sort of only start to understand, but then you can sort of master and articulate in a way that you can coach other people, having spent 20 years in the sport at a sort of the highest level possible. So yeah, I think that's probably what he brings to the table. And he's easy to get along with. He's an Aussie, so there's sort of a connection there, I suppose, between myself and Will, more so the New Zealand connection in Australia there. So yeah, he speaks the language of rowing. He's an easy guy to get along with, and I think everyone's learning a lot from his experience.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we're looking forward to kind of seeing how it all plays out, and yeah, wish you the best of luck with today. I know kind of it'll be an important step for you in building to the boat race, but very much looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks very much for taking the time to chat with us.
Sweet.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Top stuff. If you've got Drew Ginn on your side, you're doing a lot right. We'll talk about him shortly, but before we do that, because the race is going to be off fairly shortly, in about 5 minutes' time, let's just look through the crew then. You'll see some familiar names we've just been talking to then. T-Mac, Tom McIntosh in the 6th seat, Will O'Connell in the 2nd seat. And we'll come on to the London Rowing Club. Talk us through it then, Dave. You know them well, a lot of these characters, and you can say know them well in the London Rowing Club. But first, your alma mater.
Yes, so talking through the Oxford crew at Bow Seat, we've got Tom Sharrock, 2-seat Will O'Connell, 3-seat Felix Rawlinson, James Doran, Tassilo von Muller, Tom McIntosh, Nick Rusher, Nick Cole and Tobias Bernard. I think we've got a kind of huge amount of experience here. Just looking at the stem, Nicholas Cole stroked the Italian 4 at the recent Paris Olympics. Nick Rusher, bronze medal in the US men's 8. Tom McIntosh was racing a single, and in an extremely competitive event, having won the Olympics in Paris. Tassilo von Muller, I rode with him kind of my year back in 2022. He brings a huge amount of kind of German efficiency to the boat. He's a real smooth engine, and I think has just been kind of stepping on and on and on since 2022. James Doran is an absolute powerhouse of the crew. I think brings a huge amount of power and experience. He's a returning blue, and we think kind of look to impart that wisdom on the crew. Felix, I think, is an absolute engine, is kind of what I hear about him. I think everyone says he's, in terms of his physiology, it's really, really kind of impressive, and I think brings youthful energy to the crew. So really looking forward to kind of seeing him out in action. And so Will O'Connell mentioned he'd switch sides here. So I think he's more comfortable on this current side rowing. So I think he's kind of back to his best, and really looking forward to seeing how he gets on there. And Tom Sharrock, equally a returning blue, has a huge amount of tideway experience, having also rowed with him back in 2022. And so in terms of the experience, both Olympic and boat races, is a really strong crew, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they perform.
And then London Rowing Club. Who's the stroke seat? Tom Ford.
Yes, so we got Tom Ford, Olympic champion in the strokes here, which is incredible to see. I think to have someone of such kind of talent in a fixture like this is really awesome. I think kind of and beyond just the recent Olympics, rode at Tokyo, he's a multiple world champion, a multiple European champion, and a 2-time Olympic medalist, whilst being an Olympic champion at the most recent Olympics in Paris, kind of really driving on the men's A, which absolutely dominated the event. And so to see him kind of stroking a London A is awesome, and hopefully kind of brings his experience, brings his style, his experience, and just kind of his smoothness that he brings to a crew, and kind of really looking forward to seeing how he drives his crew on, and just great to see him racing.
Because, I mean, he was, as we will say, he was deemed ineligible to row for Cambridge, but here he is, asked by London Rowing to chip in, and we met him. You had to have a chat with him, didn't you, beforehand? He hasn't done much rowing, I don't think, or much exercise, as you might say, for a bit. So this is going to be quite a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, Tom's a very athletic guy, so I think he's kind of always keeping himself in great shape. I think he's been working, I know, really hard with the MBA, and so he's been kind of fully immersed within the academic side. And you know, if there was one person to jump into my boat, I'd want it to be Tom Ford. He's an absolute incredible athlete, and so I think, he downplays his kind of own current physiological shape, but he'll be a real asset to the crew, and will certainly impart a huge amount on them.
He looked in great shape, it's got to be said, in fine form as well, working hard, doing that MBA course and making great headway, so he was saying. In terms of the rest of his crewmates, how do you assess them?
Yes, I think we've got kind of huge experience here. Isaac Workman has been at the European Championships representing Great Britain, winning gold medal there. Sam Mayer is a little powerhouse of kind of British rowing, having won Junior World Championships as well as Under 23 World Championships, and spending a fair few years in the senior setup. I think will bring a huge amount of experience as well as his background at Harvard University. Then we've got Tom Cross in the 3-seat, who equally has experience with racing at the European Championships, and he actually has rowed with James Doran before, so I think there's a nice little rivalry there. Then in the 4-seat we've got James Clark, another absolute powerhouse from Harvard Rowing, who is kind of currently balancing a very demanding work schedule with rowing, and I think is looking forward to a chance to represent London on the water. We then got Julian Black, who's raced for Canada at the Under 23 World Championships in 5-seat. Callum Jenkins at 6, who is a stalwart of London Rowing, as well as George Cowley at 7, who has won Y-fold at Henley in 2023 with London Rowing Club. Tom Ford obviously at stroke, and then Rosie Margolis coxing the boat, who won Henley with Edinburgh in 2016, racing at the Prince Albert Cup.
This is a punchy crew, isn't it? You've got internationals there, you've got Olympic champions, you've got 5 Henley winners. James, Callum and Rosie set the record time at Popular Regatta in 2025. So this is going to be a big test, surely. This is not just a nice sunny row on a Saturday afternoon. This is something where, again, this is exactly what Mark Fankenhall, the new coach, is looking for. You've got to test them. Let's see what they've learned from the help with Drew Ginn, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yes, they've raced this London crew before, but there are crew changes, and so I'm really expecting this London crew to have stepped on in speed, and equally Oxford will have hoped to have developed since their last fixture. But just in terms of the kind of challenge or potential challenge that this fixture might bring, and the uncertainty to him, I think from Mark's perspective, he'll just be looking to see his crew kind of deal with anything that gets thrown at them today, and really look to kind of step on and bring the work that they've kind of been putting into fruition for the last few months, really, since the last fixture.
A no-brainer is how he described it to me. He said, we got Drew Ginn, fantastic. Well, I knew him. He was my boss in Rowing Australia when he was over at Canberra, and also with Rowing Australia. So therefore, to have him on board was wonderful. He said he worked with the coaches in October for a week, and then he's back over here for a week as well. And all this was a lot with the athletes. And it'd be fascinating to hear how we got a slight insight there from T-Mac and from Will about what that was like and how they can do it. But there is his style. I mean, you've watched it, haven't you, Ella? The technique, the YouTube, and it's gone, it's had lots of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hits. Just to see, and the way he talks, I just love it, because this is a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Just to say, we're going to keep talking because the next race is slightly delayed. I think that's because exactly what Matthew Pinson said. If this race, there's a lot of chat and it takes time, then I'm going to have to whiz back in order to get Sarah Winkless in charge on the umpire launch. So, you've watched the Drew Ginn.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll be super
Are you doing
exciting.
what he's saying?
I hope so. And yeah, it'll be super exciting to be in the Oxford camp and have such a big name coming down to help coach. And it's always great when you have new coaches come in, a new perspective, even if it's just the odd sentence that stays with you. It's always just really those nuggets of information are gold dust.
I mean, this is the man, the awesome foursome Olympic champion, world champion. I mean, Cyril, just phenomenal record. And when he talks and he delivers that so well, you just hang on. And he was just driving back, wasn't he? It was just phenomenal. And they've painted it with all the pictures of his some of his highlights and so on. And what was interesting, Murray and Bond, that great New Zealand duo, they absolutely latched onto it and almost reworked their technique as well. How much of an impact it has on you?
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of kind of coaches who would look at Drew Ginn as a bit of an inspiration for how they'd like to coach the stroke, and equally from rowers who'd look at Drew Ginn and watch kind of the way he rows, the way he moves boats, and whether they do it successfully or not is another thing. I've always looked at him and thought I'd love to emulate how he rows and never even come close. So I think
why not? What's happened then? What can't you do? What's the difficulty? What's the challenge?
If I knew, I'd love to have changed it. I'm not too sure, but I think just in terms of the experience he'll bring to the crew and kind of his understanding, I think will be invaluable. And it is a challenge to bring in a new coach sometimes and a new perspective, and I think that can be a challenge. But it sounds like Oxford have done it in such a way that's been really beneficial. It's kind of worked really, really well and been kind of a synergy with Mark. And so really kind of looking forward to seeing how the two have worked together and both of their influence on the crew and kind of how they've complemented each other.
It'd be fascinating to know whether this is just a one-off or whether it's going to be something that will develop on a long term. Because the one thing that Mark was saying yesterday when I had a chat was that this is a 3 to 4 year project. This is something which is not just going to happen. You know this as well with the women, with Alan. You can't just walk in, flick a switch and go, right, there we are. This is not just like a football team. Sometimes a new manager comes in and suddenly they start winning again with the same players. The players are changing in terms of the crew members and the ethos, the way you've talked about how the intensity of what you do. The hours are less, but the intensity is greater. This is something which takes time to germinate and grow.
Yeah, for sure, and super great that on the men's side Mark was able to start when the season started in September. I think it was kind of tough last year. Alan had to give notice to his previous job and therefore was only able to full-time commit to Oxford women as of December, January time, and so that didn't give him much time before a March boat race. There was only a few months there to really leave his mark, and whereas Mark this year has been able to do that from September, and I know even when I was still there over the summer last year was doing a lot in preparation for the season, as he had overlap in the two positions.
It's going to be fascinating to see how he is able to make things happen for the Oxford crew, and it's interesting also how what Tom McIntosh was saying, how the two clubs now, men and women, the two sides, it is now one club, and you're both nodding there. How is that impacted, and what does that do to the mindset and the general purpose, to pick up one of your words earlier, of the whole club?
Yeah, exactly. So that was finalised in the summer in between the 2023 and 2024 boat race, so it was in place for the start of the 2024 season, and it was a really exciting change. It really brought together, I think, something that from an athlete perspective and from a committee perspective seemed natural. It seemed like the right thing to do, and I know this year they've brought that one step further, and I know socially the clubs are so integrated, and it's really great to see that atmosphere building.
I think just each boat and each kind of crew and team will be able to gain and learn so much from their kind of counterparts on the other side of the boathouse, and so I think it's only going to bring on the whole club, having everyone kind of work more cohesively together, and so it's been great to kind of see it kind of happen, and looking forward to kind of seeing how it brings Oxford on in terms of its rowing, and hopefully to kind of strength to strength in the coming years.
Seems like a reset at Wallingford.
Yeah, for sure. I even know that Sunday time trials now are done together with both the men and the women kind of boating at the same time and being started on those time trials down the Wallingford stretch. And it just really builds the atmosphere. A bigger group can add a lot to each other, and I know it's really productive for them.
I mean, it's like a Team GB sense, is it? It's not two separate units, as you might say, two separate groups. There's the sense that we're all part of one organisation and we're all going in one direction.
Yeah, exactly, and kind of, yes, we'd be on separate teams and we'd do slightly different kind of training programs that kind of respected, what worked for each group, but ultimately to kind of go and see kind of the women's team go and do their row tests, and maybe all kind of 90% of the team achieves a personal best. Your test is coming up in 2 weeks, for example. Those sort of instances are where I think that kind of unification of the clubs really makes a massive difference, and you can take real confidence from seeing the benefit or the kind of the achievements of one side of the club, and then and kind of translate them and reflect on how they'll influence your own side of it. So it's wonderful to kind of see the benefits that each kind of side will bring to the table and receive from it.
One of the interesting things yesterday, being down on the Tideway, was to see Drew Ginn talking to James Powell, for example. Mark brought him along, and the assistant women's coach, and there is that sense that we are all this. Together we are stronger. Together we are better.
Yeah, for sure. A phrase that was used quite a lot in both 2023 and 2024 was the one dream, one team mentality. And it is that shared experience. There's not many people in the world that have done such a unique campaign preparing for such a unique rowing race in the very extreme setting of Oxford University. And so there's kind of these two groups of 40 people who know so closely exactly what you're going through, whereas other people, they don't. And that's special. That's something shared between those two groups in that year.
And even from today, kind of the women's fixtures will look very different to the men's, but they'll be able to kind of discuss and chat, and maybe on the coxing side they'll kind of reflect and see how it went for each of them, and on kind of the athlete or the rower's side they'll be able to reflect on their own experience, but kind of whether it was kind of going through this landmark and how that kind of impacted their race. And so I think just it provides a wealth of information which you can learn from, and just makes it kind of easier moving forwards and taking the level to the next step.
So we're waiting, as you can see, going to live pictures for the crews. We know that the London Rowing Club, the opposition for Oxford men in this fixture, won the toss, and they have chosen the Surrey station. Entirely predictable, I think it's fair to say. Everyone seems to go for the Surrey station, except, of course, last year, which nearly paid off. That would have been. And yet, actually, when you look at the results, it's pretty much 50-50. So it's like there's such a we make such a big thing. Oh, they've gone for Surrey station, they've gone for Middlesex station, and yet, in the end, it doesn't. Does it make that much difference?
Yeah, I think those outside of the boat race make more of a big deal about the stations and the importance of the stations than perhaps the athletes do and the coaches do in the lead up to your own race. And perhaps that's a way to cope with the uncertainty of a coin toss. It's only decided 2 hours before what you'll be on, so you need to be completely comfortable with either one, and they'll have done fixtures on each, and it might be that they choose to pick the Surrey station today just because in other fixtures they've been on the Middlesex station, so I wouldn't really read too much into that.
And ultimately, sometimes, or not sometimes, ultimately the fastest boat wins. That's often the case, and not necessarily always, but yes, these bends and these advantages do kind of impact and influence the race and the outcome of it. But ultimately, you're looking to be the fastest crew and move at the fastest pace, and so that's kind of your focus, and the side and the station you have isn't necessarily a focus.
So here we go. Just building up to the start of this second race, the men's race, and Sarah Winkles will be the umpire in charge, the Olympic bronze medalist, two-time world champion, the first woman to umpire the men's race. And as we make our way under the bridge and get something like 1,800 metres away, and then steady, and we should be underway. Is it my imagination, or is that water looking a little bit more churned than we had for the start of the women's race?
Yeah, I think the start of this race is looking a little bit more similar to the end of the women's race, and so it'll be interesting to see as we get further down the course, because it worsened for the women, how it will turn for the men.
So Surrey station is the London Rowing Club, Oxford on the Middlesex station. There's Tobias Bernard then, holding his right arm up. Still waiting for Rosie Margolis. And we're underway. Sarah Winkler says go, and let's see who makes the strong start. Certainly at the moment it would seem to the naked eye that London Rowing Club have got off very impressively, and let's see how Tom Ford, CUBC, Cambridge University Boat Club, Olympic champion, as Dave was saying, multiple winner in all sorts of series, how he's led off this 8. It's certainly gone fast. That is a very impressive start.
And you can see just how difficult the water is here. Even just kind of when they were lining up there, the boats were moving about, blades were kind of moving up and down in the water, and you can just see, even from the camera launch, just how much the pitch is moving. And so hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of just how challenging these conditions are. But it looks a very even start so far.
Yes, Oxford have come back, but it's just see London Rowing Club, I'd say, up by 3 seats. So they've just gone past where we are in the London Rowing Club, and that gives you a very strong indication.
Yeah, the crew's very close together now. I think if I was the umpire, I'd be very much wanting to move them apart. And we can hear now her in the background shouting Oxford to move over back to the Middlesex station. And this is similar to what we saw happen in the women's race, where Jack was warned from the Leander crew. So those in the Middlesex station will really be trying to push the Surrey crew out as far as they can.
How do we reckon on the Oxford response? Because it's, as I said, 2 or 3 seats we saw when they go past, and still, as we come now with Fulham Football Club on the inside, on the right of our picture there, the Middlesex station, this is the chance where Oxford will try to maximise what could be a quarter of a length or so. If they're able to do that, can they draw level? And it seems they've responded well.
Yeah, so they'll just be getting into their kind of race pace rhythm now. It's a 4-minute piece, so it's not long in comparison to kind of the full length of the boat race or sort of the piece we've seen in the women's side. These aren't long pieces, and so there's definitely a bit more of a sprint element to it, but they are going to want to hit kind of a mid-race pace here and get into a sustainable rhythm. And so you can see Oxford are at 35, London slightly higher at 35.5, but looks like they've settled well onto their base race or base race pace here.
As Oxford make a bit of a move once more, going for that faster stream.
Yeah, for sure. So now as we come past Barn Elms Boat Club on the left of your screen there, and Craven Cottage out of shot, but on the right-hand side of the river, this is the Middlesex bend. This is where the advantage is in Oxford's favour. Looking like we potentially are going to have a clash here.
Very much so. They're going closer and closer. So far, and again Oxford then move away, almost like magnets suddenly separating. London Rowing Club move away. Didn't quite hear who Sarah's asking to move.
The crews look sort of dead level here, and you know these are very typical boat race conditions. The water, or the height of the water's come up, so the waves are kind of bouncing off concrete each side. It's a bit of a kind of mirror or a wave or a kind of wash is getting mirrored and bounced back, and so it's not easy conditions. You can see that the water's roughened up here, but it looks like Oxford are just starting to utilise their bend and maybe slip out a little bit, and they're going to want to sort of capitalise on this. It is very close though, and you know anything can happen in these sort of situations.
Stroke rate very similar, and I'm watching the clock too because they're going to be 4-minute pieces, so we got to 3 minute 20, 21, 22. You can see the clock at the top left of the screen, and Oxford have come back well, having been down. Yes, they've made the most of their Middlesex station, but nonetheless they had to do it, and it's mission accomplished on that level.
Yeah, and the Middlesex advantage is now worn out, so we're at a straight part of the course. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Do London come back, make a response, or in these last 15 seconds will Oxford hold on to that lead?
Another shout there from Sarah Winkler saying Oxford. See the boat is seemingly at the Oxford crew on the right, arrowing more towards the centre stream. Let's see how London Rowing Club respond. We've had 4 minutes and we're winding down.
Okay, crew, stay together.
But this is just, I mean, now we can put a clock on it for another minute and then we're off again. So there'll be none of the delays that we saw after those 3 pieces for the women, which takes a lot more time to navigate and negotiate with the crews turning and then getting in the right position.
That first piece may not be the most revealing of sort of the differences in boat speed. We'll start to see as the pieces develop when we move on to the second and third piece, you know, actually the difference in boat speed and, you know, whether there is one or not. So we saw Oxford starting to creep away at the kind of second half of that piece there, but given the short turnaround, there's not much recovery time. They're going to be straight back to it. If London have really thrown kind of everything at it, they'll start to struggle, and if not, they'll start to reap the kind of dividends now of having the Surrey bend and look to see if they can move back through Oxford and really take it to them.
Yeah, for sure, totally agree with you there. I think the first 4 minutes of the boat race are very different to the rest of the course. I think the first 4 minutes are very front-loaded, so it'll be interesting now. I'm sure there'll be more on the mid-race pace here, and we're off for the second piece now, starting the second of a 4-minute piece.
If I was Oxford, I'd want to really step on now and look to kind of dominate this second piece. I'd want to kind of push on and kind of show that, you know, London have really kind of given it their all. And yes, they had a quick first 4 minutes, but as you can see there, kind of challenging conditions, another bit of big launch wash, which is only going to make the race more interesting, and you know, kind of that can influence things and really change and disrupt a crew that's in its mid-race pace.
So the Surrey bend is going to be developing soon for the London Rowing Club, but Oxford in touch at the moment, and let's see how they are able to kick on, having done so well in that first piece. But now the challenge is on to see how they make a response to the bend, the Surrey bend, which will favour the London Rowing Club. Have they got the power and the pace that Dave was just talking about, that Tom took them out of them. Tom Ford in his CUBC top, exactly the same stroke rate.
It looks to be dead level here, sort of London with Oxford, so there's really nothing to take or nothing to pick between the crews, and I think Tom Ford's doing a fantastic job of kind of stroking that London crew, kind of bringing his experience and rhythm and style to the crew, and I think they look to be almost kind of taking a seat here. I know the bend's starting to come in their favour, but they look to be dealing with the chop and the challenge of the conditions very well, and I think you can kind of see the benefit of his experience and what he's bringing to that crew.
It's not just about any rivalry that there might be between the CUBC row and the OUBC. The fact is, for London Rowing Club, what an honour to be racing in the same boat as someone who's this multiple champion around the world, and this is a great thrill for them as much as us to see how he can just come into this crew the first time on the water with them. And look at this. Yes, there's the Surrey station, but it's such a seemingly flowing move at the moment.
To have the Paris Olympic champion racing against the Tokyo Olympic champion is pretty special. So I'm not too sure if that's happened before in the boat race, but just from a fixture point, this is pretty awesome to see.
Tom McIntosh, the president, in seat 6, and of course we can see Tom Ford strikingly in his kit in the stroke seat. And there we get are we straight on? We're going to see now. There's not much in it, so Oxford have responded really well. In fact, it's almost level, isn't it? That is mighty impressive, surely.
Yeah, I think if I was Mark Frankenhall looking at this, London Rowing Club definitely had an advantage coming around that bend on the Surrey position. So I'd be very impressed with Oxford men and how Tobias Bernard and Cox in the seat has handled that, and what he's telling the crew. I'd be very happy.
So London looked to be kind of making the most of their bend. They did look to kind of slip out a little bit more, and it looks maybe like Oxford responded. Tobias has got to kind of really effectively try and bully London and push them out their water, try and negate their bend as much as possible. It still looks pretty much dead level between the crews, and so I think a very good racing so far.
Fascinating watch. This is, yes, as Dave said, and also Will and Tom McIntosh pre-race were saying, you know, the previous fixture, it was very much Oxford who dominated, but even so, you've got to do it again, and a different crew, there's a different feel, this is a different dynamic, because this is now just 2 weeks out from the boat race. Very different conditions, and they're certainly handling this with the favour of the Surrey bend for the London Rowing Club, and Oxford still very much in touch. And we've got another 30 seconds on this second of 4 pieces, with the minute break in between the row. Supremely done. Beautiful setting. I think it seems actually a little bit calmer now, doesn't it? Because that start was something else. But then that's the whole point. That's the whole point of negotiating, navigating this.
It might now have got a bit choppier. But yeah, looking like the Surrey bend is now increasing, so a greater advantage to London Rowing Club than we perhaps had between the 3rd and 4th minute there, and they've just wound down to end the second piece.
These look like pretty nasty conditions to row, and this isn't the sort of conditions you love to row, and it's pretty tiring on every aspect of your body. You've got to hold your oar pretty kind of firmly to make sure it doesn't get lost in the wind, and equally it's just an energy sapping wind you're rowing into, and the chop is not fun. In terms of the margin there, it looked like Oxford had maybe a seat or two, and so did a good job to kind of hold London round their bend and you know, not let them use that advantage too much. But in terms of the racing here, it's incredibly close. I think London are really kind of holding their own against the very strong Oxford crew.
So we take a little breather. How different then is this then, remembering what you both said, the longer the gap between the pieces, the more challenging it is to find all that lactic acid and so on, and the tiredness. How easier, in inverted commas, is this when you just got a minute break and you're out again?
I don't know if easier is potentially the word that those athletes right now will be using. It looks like they're winding up again for the 3rd piece, so we're already off, so that was a very short minute, it felt like, and I'm sure it will feel even shorter for the athletes in the boat. Some tough conditions already, and maybe moving close to looking like a clash.
And the crew's getting very close together here, so we might kind of see a bit of excitement with the clashing, and you know, it is always present in most boat races, so from Oxford's perspective it will be good to practice it, and their cocks might want to challenge them and look to kind of put them under pressure, and really again bully London in what is coming up to be another aspect or another bit of their bend.
But this is one of the things which you were saying in the week was what really helped you, in inverted commas, in the fixture, the OUBC fixture against Oxford Brookes in 2022. There was a clash, and you learnt about it, you know, how the various crew members reacted.
Yeah, exactly. We came up against in our fixture series a very, very strong Oxford Brookes crew, coached by coxed by Harry Brightmore, who is now an Oxford coach, but also an Olympic champion in the coxing seat. I think he's kind of the best cox out there, and he knew exactly what to do to effectively bully us, and we came off worse from it, but learned a lot from it. So in terms of the experience and insight we gained from coming off poorly in a clash during the fixture series, I think we learned a lot for the boat race itself.
So what did you learn then? What was the benefit of the clashes?
Effectively, to make sure you win it. So you just got to pull harder, and hit the blade of the other person. It's fairly brutal, but it's a part of the sport. It's a part of the race, and it's unique to the boat race, which is half the reason it makes it so interesting. But you just got to make sure you come out on top of those and are the aggressor.
So at the moment, with the Surrey Bend supposedly favouring the London Rowing Club, Oxford are doing a decent job, it has to be said. And they would have expected that in one sense, I suppose, given the previous results which we've talked about. But nonetheless, this is a different day. It's a different river because of the conditions. It's different conditions as well. So therefore, they're staying in touch. There's a little more than a seat in it, you'd say. And we're halfway through this third piece.
Exactly, and that Surrey Bend advantage to London Rowing Club is about to end, and it will be interesting to see how Oxford's race pace will step on, and whether we'll see an increase in the gap between Oxford and London as we move on to this straight part of the course past Chiswick Fair.
They look to be doing it already, but London now can start to push Oxford over. Their bends run out. They should look to challenge Oxford, see if they can kind of get some blade-on-blade action, push them over and push them out the fast water, and it looks like they're doing that now. So a great test just to see who comes off best from these clashes.
100%, and these clashes are such important prep for athletes of any pedigree coming into this race, but I think especially when athletes come from straight course racing, it's such a new experience coming into this.
Yeah, it's very different. You're not clashing in an Olympic final, and so it's a brand new experience. And yes, you might have Olympic champions in the boat, but they might not necessarily have spent time clashing. And though I'm sure they'll be kind of well prepared for it, and will kind of execute it very, very well.
At the moment, by the looks of it, unless I'm getting it wrong, I'd say there are maybe 2 seats. Oxford have moved clear now, and this is in the 4th minute of this third piece. And they're stepping on, as you would say. This is exactly what they'll be looking for, what the coach, Mark Bangan Hall, will be hoping. And yes, most definitely, Oxford have risen to the challenge. And with London coming again really close, with Rosie Margolis asking the questions of the Oxford crew. But they are determined to stay on their line.
And from Rosie's perspective there, that's exactly what you want to do. You can kind of see Oxford were just starting to slip away, and she got kind of her bowerman's blade on the 7th seat of Oxford's blade, and disrupted the Oxford rhythm there, and it looks like it kind of held them, stopped their speed, stopped their advance. So from her perspective, I think she kind of did exactly what you'd want to do in that position, and Oxford need to respond now and see if they can continue that march they had just as the piece comes to a close.
Piece 3, you'd say, to Oxford as well. Gripping watching, I have to say. This is, which is nothing against the previous, the 3 pieces, but this is fascinating to see how these 2 crews are almost jousting, dueling their way down the river, with the conditions and the river changing almost with every stroke.
I think that's where the kind of different format really comes in, because you've got 4 minutes on, 1 minute off. It's very different to kind of splitting the boat race up over 3 separate pieces, and so you just kind of, you're able to have a much more close contest between the 2 crews, and that's kind of what we can see, or what we can see with them effectively being dead level almost most of the way down. And it looks like Oxford, basically in the first 3 pieces of these 4, have kind of moved away that last 45 seconds or so, but for the first 3 and a bit minutes or so, they're dead level. So the bend is now in Oxford's favour. It'll be interesting to see whether they can close it or close the piece earlier, or equally how London can respond, and whether Rosie can really bully them around the outside of the bend.
Do you think, because at one stage I know Mark, the coach, Mark Bangan Hall, was talking about maybe we start a little bit behind and have that, as you say, that sensation of catching, chasing? It does seem an element of that, don't you think, there? Unless the camera angle is deceptive.
That might just be a seat or 2 in it, just in terms of how quickly each of them built up to speed. But there might have been talk of that, but realistically I think they wanted to see what the relative speed between the 2 crews was, and really there's not much in between it. And so from Oxford's perspective, London are putting up a very good race. They're a quick crew, and so there's really no reason to be putting yourself behind.
Yeah, definitely challenging water as we're coming to the final stretch of the boat race course. Seems that they've faced that throughout the race, throughout the different pieces. But I'd say that both crews seem to be handling it a bit better further into the race, which is really fantastic to see, because as your physiology kind of wears you down, you don't want that technique to slip.
I wonder if we're going to see a stroke rating, because Oxford seem to have picked it up again, moving what might have been, say, maybe a seat lower, but maybe that's me looking for a bit of drama. But at the moment, Oxford seem to have stepped on, and they've gone early, as you might say, just a minute into this particular piece. Yes, they've got the advantage of the Middlesex station, but that is some pace, isn't it?
Yeah, so this looks to be the kind of biggest margin they've had so far at this point in the piece. So we'll see whether they can hold it. The rowing is still it looks very tricky in terms of rowing into this wind. It's very challenging conditions. You can just see the kind of the wash they're having to deal with in the wind. And in terms of the boat, in terms of the rate, they look very kind of even between the boats, 35 for Oxford and 34.5 for London. So very evenly matched there, but you can kind of see just the challenge of the conditions they're having to deal with.
How do you handle this? Knowing what's on the line, but at the same time trying to manage these conditions where if you catch a crab, you're in, that's it, goodbye.
I think as an athlete in that position, you're trying not to think about the option of catching a crab, and you are trying to stay as internal as possible, listening to your cocks. Tobias will really be focusing on technique probably at this point, telling them to just kind of grip on and really push through the water when they are in, and trying to keep it as clean as possible. And he'll be really communicating to them how close they are to the finish, because they obviously are not aware of that. And it's looking good.
So Oxford are kind of now dominating this last piece, and so we don't exactly know their approach to these pieces and how they kind of wanted to approach them and kind of what they wanted to get out of it. But just in terms of sort of rowing their own race and not kind of going too early or too hard too early, they look to have been kind of the quicker crew in all these pieces. The margins were very slight in those first three, but I think they seem to be kind of reaping the rewards of it now as they've moved out to a kind of fair margin. So look to have kind of the baseline speed, which looks to be a little bit quicker than London's.
Little warning there from Sarah Winkles, but they're out in charge, aren't they? They've got this one. They've really stamped their authority on it with just over a minute to go.
Yeah, Oxford very much have clear water there, but Sarah is not happy, not comfortable enough for them to move over in front of the London Rowing Club crew.
Very efficient. It's all about making that boat go faster, and the Dugin mantra is very much about efficiency. Can you just be smooth? And here they come approaching the finishing line, and that is a job well done. 4 pieces, and everyone seemingly very much according to how Mark Fangenhorde wanted. That is some margin. You may have Tom Ford, a brilliant rower, an inspiration in and out of the boat, but that is some statement maybe by Oxford, but let's see, keep it all in perspective.
Interesting, it looks like Oxford have wound down once they've seen the finish, whereas London have continued rowing to the end of that 4-minute marker. So I'm not sure what the plan was there, but it seems like the crews had different ideas of where the finish line was.
Well, it's a good finish for London in that sense, but in terms of the overall piece, if you were in that boat, Dave, how would you be analysing instantly how that felt and how promising that was?
Yes, I think without kind of looking at margins or anything, in terms of the rowing, it looked like they dealt with the conditions well. There was the odd kind of moment they clipped a big wave or got blown about a bit by the wind, but it was certainly challenging conditions and up against a quick crew. So just in terms of the kind of learnings from the fixture, I think there's a huge amount to take away. There was a little bit of clashing. There looked to be some fairly kind of close or boats in close proximity to each other. So I think a huge amount to learn. And I think that is the difficulty of 4-minute pieces with 1 minute on, 1 minute off, is you're not going to see those same margins that you'd see in much longer pieces. You can see as soon as one boat gets out in front, the margins tend to kind of be exaggerated, and I think that's actually what the Oxford women did really well in not letting that happen. And equally, you can see that was a slightly different kind of piece setup, and you're doing slightly different or style of racing there, but just from the Oxford perspective, I think they kind of dealt with those challenges really well.
So this was the start where we saw London Rowing Club launch away very impressively under Tom Ford, but then it's this resilience and it's the efficiency that you're looking for in the dark blues. Togetherness and that spirit, that bond, and also that cohesion within a crew, surely, to respond in the positive way and be ready to react? Because it's all about the reaction, isn't it? If the other crew does this, then how do you respond? Or are you able to dominate and therefore get them to react and try to respond?
And this London crew looks to be really strong. I think Tom Ford's kind of brought a huge amount to it. I know they've just raced the head of the river there and lost out to their local rivals Thames, so they'll be looking to kind of step on as they prep towards the 2K season and build towards Henley. But it'd be interesting to see kind of what they learnt from having Tom Ford row with them and kind of what they can take away from having such an experienced athlete and someone who's competed at the highest level to the greatest success, and what he brings to the crew.
You can see the challenge of the conditions there, the white horses lapping at times and causing challenges as they were going to reach for that stroke. But in terms of the overall performance, they came well, and in this third piece were looking to make the most of how they could come back at the London crew with the Surrey station, and that all seemed to flow despite, as we saw there, a bit of getting close to a clash which Sarah Winkler's had to take charge of, which is all part of the build-up. But this is surely a job well done, isn't it, by Oxford?
Yeah, I think Oxford will be coming away from this fixture really happy with their performance. They were challenged by London, they were challenged by the conditions, and they're physiologically very challenged by a 4 minute on, 1 minute off. So I think they'll be very chuffed with how things have gone today and be looking to build on that in the final 2 weeks before the boat race on the 13th of April.
Yes, it was close, it was tight, but that's what they're looking for, because in 2 weeks' time that could be absolutely one of the stories. If there's a clash of blades and something dramatic happens, how do you react?
And you can see there just in that kind of slow-mo replay exactly what Rosie's trying to do in the London crew. She's trying to hit him and disrupt him. You can see, it's a really tricky thing to deal with, and sometimes, and from the Oxford perspective, that there's sometimes nothing you can do. You just got to respond and react to it as positively as possible. And if come off worse in a situation like that, not saying they did there, but if you just clash blades and sometimes you miss a stroke, you just have to get on with it. And Oxford did a really good job of doing that there, but equally kind of great coxing there from London to really put themselves in the fight and challenge Oxford there.
So 2 good fixtures for your club, surely, for the men and the women. Different, and the learnings will be different, but in terms of the key is it's yes, you can lose against Leander or you can beat London Rowing Club, but in the end there's one target, and that is CUBC in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Very different fixtures, different outcomes of the fixtures, but I'd say Oxford will be happy with both. They'll be happy with a very side-by-side race for the men versus London for most of those pieces, and on the women's side they will have been really happy to challenge themselves against Leander, against a very strong crew, and to run themselves through the scenario of being down and how do they mentally deal with that.
You may just have caught the launch there with Mark Van Hall. Do you see his dog, Otto?
I think his dog goes everywhere with him.
He does. He's attached to him. He was in the launch yesterday and was clearly very happy there. If Otto's sad, then things have gone really badly wrong, certainly, but very happy and enjoying the sunshine. But more seriously, a few words there with it's interesting the makeup of the crew, because a lot of talk about the 2 Nicks at the stern with Nick O'Cole and Nick Rusher. How convinced were you that was the way forward?
Yeah, ultimately it's kind of hard to really know when you've got an outside perspective, and you just kind of got to look at the talent between the 2 of them and kind of think, that's got to be a pretty impressive stern pairing, and in terms of that's up there in terms of the top talent the boat race has ever seen in a stern pair. So Nick stroked his four at the Olympics, and I remember getting absolutely rowed through by him just driving his crew on. So in terms of someone to drive your crew on, I can think of many people better there, and Nick Rusher behind him in the 7 seat equally provides kind of length and fluidity from his time in the USA, and has clearly experienced sitting in the sterns of 8s. I know he spent a lot of time there, whether in the US or equally on the national team and at Yale. So I think between the 2 of them, I think a great pairing and bring a real raciness and cohesion that the rest of the crew can build off.
Saxon Stacey not in ISIS, not Will O'Connell. That's, some people were saying, but interesting, puzzling maybe, or surprising, better word.
Yeah, I think it's a great sign for Oxford to have such a competitive squad and to be really challenging the top of ISIS and the the lower seats in the blue boat, really challenging them for that. I know Saxon has struggled with illness a bit this year and kind of lost his seat quite close to the crew announcement, so I'm sure that's a sore point for him. But I know that now they've consolidated the ISIS crew, that he's very much a leading character in that and will be monopolising on that for sure.
But as we know, never ever say never, because if things go wrong, illness, that's one of the you don't talk about it, but you do not want to get ill, because this is the big moment. You've done everything, all those training hours and up at who knows when and going to bed late, working or whatever, and you're all there, and then suddenly something can go wrong and that's it. And you're out of it. Maybe not in the ISIS crew, you've gone for good.
Yeah, and whilst he'll be disappointed not to have made the kind of blue boat, he's a great team player, and he'll recognise the challenge at hand and kind of taking on Goldie on boat race day, and will be ready up for that. And will do his part for the team, and sometimes circumstances can change and last minute crew changes can happen, but whether he's in the blue boat or not, he's got a really, really important kind of place within the team, and he'll know that, and be ready to take the challenge on.
The countdown is underway. We've got the crew announcements made. We've just seen the final fixture for Oxford. Now we're ready, looking towards the race on April the 13th. Final questions as we look at a very impressive scene. Wembley Arch in the distance. There's Fulham Football Club, amazingly transformed. How's these next 2 weeks? How do you recall it last year for you?
These next 2 weeks, I think, are actually some of my favourite as an athlete. You spend so much time with the other people in your boat who have become your best friends. You live together in London for a week. You do everything together. There's quite a bit of excitement with the media, with a press conference, with so many different interviews, and it all feels very real. I know the last week before the race, you see all of the TV cameras being set up, all of the different positions. Yeah, I just remember feeling the excitement was building and it was coming.
Yeah, I think kind of soon the crews will move to Putney, and they'll be based here for the last few kind of days or week before the race, and things really start to get real then. And as kind of Ella was alluding to, the signs go up and more launches come down, and they start to set up cameras, and the excitement of the occasion really builds. And yes, you've been building towards it all year, and you want to stay on you kind of want to stay within your focuses. And when it comes to race day, you don't want to think of things too differently, but it's hard to escape the occasion. It is very exciting, and from the athlete perspective, I think you just want to enjoy it. It's a unique experience, and it's a kind of you'll never experience a race like it in the world. So from their perspective, I hope they just really enjoy it and soak it all up while they can.
The belief is there. Yes, this could be the year.
100%.
100%, always.
Love it. Just 3 words, 100% always. Dave Ambler and Ella Stadler, thank you very much indeed. From Jonathan Ledyard, thank you very much for enjoying the last 2 hours. I hope you've enjoyed the last 2 hours. It's been a wonderful sunny day. The fixtures have been completed. Now it's eyes down for the boat race itself. 2025. Enjoy the ride over the next 2 weeks. But from all of us at London Rowing Club and on the Tideway, thank you very much indeed.
It's not just that we want to win, there are jobs and reputations on the line here.
Finish 15th.
Lessons to learn.
I don't know why you keep looking at me for advice. You believe in yourself.
Oxford came here to try and turn the tide, but it has not turned yet.
We can win this.
Not here just to have a fun time.
Utter despondence in the Oxford crew.
Yeah, it would probably really suck if we didn't win.
I will sell my soul to the devil to win this race.